behind
the death sentence as well was
it
being
was death row,
reconsidered.
okay, and also to understand whether these things require resentencing, revisiting, the whole thing. But you see, I would have assumed that this is a sort of study that would actually be looking at the effectiveness of our penal system and asking the question is, all right, here is what we have. Do you have any information of people who are what they call serial killers in movies, okay? Repeat offenders. Is there information on it? One doesn't actually see that. Is there information on, as you say correctly?
One doesn't see it in the story, not
yes,
in the
exactly.
report.
But one does. I would have assumed that this is information that would be important, because when you have a repeat offender and you have them in numbers, it tells you something about our penal system. And if it also tells you the age at which this person first entered that penal system, whether they went to a Boston remand for children and what have you, it will tell you. There's a lot of information that perhaps the report doesn't give, but the manner in which this thing is reported, what it does, it will raise more questions and it provides answers.
What is the relevance of the tribal connotations here?
What? I tend to believe that this report, when it comes all the way to the granular level of, looking at that data, and it picks out tribe, it has picked out very many things.
So why not highlight those?
That the tribe issue
talk about the story,
is
not the report.
Is something that our reporter, the person who's reported this thing,
It's
decided to highlight.
Yeah.
It's us, the media, at our tricks again.
It's what has actually been reported.
It's more captivating as a headline.
It's more captivating because I'm sure this report has a lot more information, but this is what the writer decided to focus on.
They do go on to give a bit more information. They say casual labourers and low-income earners top the list of men and women incarcerated for murder.
Yeah, but unfortunately, by the time you read the first part of it, where it gives the tribal skew,
the
you're not going to.
that's
the headline.
You're not going to read women top the list of murder convicts.
You're not going to read the rest of those statistics or the rest of that
big part,
information because your mind is already set on the tribal issue.
The reason why the task force was established gets a small part there. The task force suggests changes in sentencing that would see convicts released from prison early. Some of the recommendations that were supposed to.
Yes, but ask yourself the simple question: the fact that someone was convicted of murder, does it mean that they actually committed murder? What is it about our system?
No, we've got to accept the legal system as it is.
No, we don't.
Question everything.
No, we don't.
Okay.
If you want to give this sort of report, then you need to tell us also how many of these cases have gone for appeal, how many of them have succeeded, what was the appeal based on. There's a whole lot of information that you need, because we do have cases of people who've been jailed and wrongfully so.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There are 1,457 cases, ongoing cases. 1,457 ongoing cases that could end up with a conviction that lends itself to the death sentence. 4,800 death row convicts, offenders waiting for resentencing. Right? I think those are the ones on appeal. 3,360. Those are very many in number. It's a huge numbers we're talking about.
It may be time we sort of reformed our prison system so that it's actually sort of rehabilitative as opposed to punitive the way it is.
It's actually meant to be a rehabilitative system, right?
It's very punitive.
I think we should also look at our justice system. And, stifling the judiciary of money is one of the things that should not be happening.
Interesting.
Eric, the LSK came to the rescue of our judicial system the other day. But the questions that were raised about the judicial system were not answered. What it then became was a legal circus. Lawyers going to court,
saying it's illegal for
to
the government
defend judges who are probably going to be affected most by those cuts, and they were going before these very same judges to argue on their behalf and in their favor. How do you think that's going to turn out?
Let's wait and see. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. You remember you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store, and just with one subscription fee you get access to all of Standard Group's publications. It's 23 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Okay. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Let's get into the conversations this morning. CT Muga.
Yes. one of the problems that I personally have whenever I read headlines and everything that I see is politics, 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 and then some more politics, I'm actually at a loss at what to actually think, because it's like my thought process is being determined for me. I just need to switch on the radio, switch on the TV, and there's more and more politics. This alignment of politicians, or this queuing of politicians that we saw over the weekend in support of ODM, reminds one of a time gone by. Reminds one of the time before when people were agitating for multi-partyism. It reminds one of the time when we did get a multi-party system, and now people who are aligning themselves to decide the direction they feel the country should go, and parties were formed. And the predominant party at that particular time was called Ford. And what we then saw was this very Ford broke up into many, many small Fordlings. There was Ford Asili.
Did you say Fordlings? Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
Fordlings. I said
Okay.
Fordlings.
Okay.
Little Fords.
Cute.
Yes.
All right.
So then came Ford Kenya. With time we had new Ford Kenya. And then, in short, every other Ford came into being. So what appeared to have been one strong party disintegrated. And guess what happened? When we went to the elections, the then president won. Yes. And he was to win again. And in that time, other groupings such as this one got formed. We got NAC during the Kibaki era. We saw that disintegrate. Anytime you have a formation such as this one here, what it tells you is that the political leaders have sensed that there is a future that they'd like to belong to. There's a direction in which the political winds are blowing, and they do not want to be left behind. So the question that one asks right now when you see such a gathering is, which direction is this particular political wind going? Is it going the BBI route, or is it going some other route? But when you have this number of people, this is a by-election in a constituency, one constituency in the country. And you see all these leaders, and these are notable. These aren't your small-time leaders. These are serious people who have serious followings. And you see them coming to, well, you have to ask. But you also have to ask is, what is it that got them so scared? Because is it really that the other people who are vying for this seat, who are represented by Jubilee, is it that they are so strong?
Not by Jubilee, by one faction of Jubilee.
That is what we keep being told, that is one faction. But as a layman, the gentleman who is representing a party, I don't know of any party that is called a faction of a party.
Have we seen the leader of the party actually support him and actually go out and campaign?
No, we
on
haven't.
The campaign trail?
We have seen the leader
We
handing
haven't.
over a
that
cup,
was a photo opportunity
right?
that was magnified.
We have seen the leader. We have seen the deputy leader of the party campaigning.
We've also seen very notable Jubilee members actually now back ODM. So
Junior members.
that's more telling. Wan Waigoro is a junior member. She's
Yes.
a governor.
Yes.
Not at all.
She doesn't hold a position in the
Not
party.
at all. No, I
party
think
leader
the
and the
fact that
deputy
the
party
president
leader.
has not been in Kibra campaigning is very telling as to his stand on Mariga.
What exactly does it tell us, really?
Well, it tells us that this is actually a Ruto project, no doubt. That is the person we've seen campaign vigorously in this by-election. We haven't seen the president in Kibra once. Of course, he's making sure that he protects the handshake or keeps up the spirit of the handshake, which we feel, or I feel rather, might be tampered with, by fronting or fielding a Jubilee candidate.
So if we have an individual who is supposedly a Jubilee candidate and the Jubilee headquarters, or the secretariat as you call it, has not complained that he's not one of them, we can only assume that he is a Jubilee candidate.
He is a Jubilee candidate. Of course, it's a delicate balance within Jubilee. You remember it was a coalition of two parties, or it was two parties that came together. So there's going to be differences in sort of strategy,
Or
approach.
13 parties.
Well, I'm thinking of URP and TNA, and that's the sort of divide that you start to see coming through now, colloquially known as Kiweleke, and
Let's just go with that.
and Tanga. Although I heard Raila referred to them as taka the other day, which I thought was quite apt, to be honest. So what's happened here is it's that faction of Jubilee that is supporting Mariga. And it's quite clear, even in some of people would call spokespeople for the presidency. Not officially, but those of us who understand the intrigues of politics. When Commander is supporting ODM, it's very telling.
What is it telling?
It's just telling of the direction of some of the leaders within Jubilee. And it's not facing the Mariga side.
Is it telling us that Jubilee is broken?
I think we were told that a while ago, but yes, it's becoming clearer. It's I think the writing is crystal clear now. The writing is on the wall.
If
that,
indeed there are disagreements within
factions.
Jubilee, what you've described so far, disagreements, it's not as though the party has broken up, has it?
It will. It will.
Well, that is for the future. But now let's talk about this gathering of leaders at Kibra, shall we?
This weekend?
Yes. I was saying that whenever leaders gather in such a manner, it usually portends something. It tells you. It's like birds flocking on a tree at the same time, or birds flying in a certain direction. There are those who say that it sometimes portends not just a change of weather, but a change of season. So these particular birds are flocking in Kibra. So what is this season that we can look forward to? What are these changes that we can look forward to?
What we're seeing here clearly is political alignments and realignments. This by-election provides an opportunity or a platform for people to realign themselves politically. And you've seen that. I mean, this is Anne Waigoro, governor of Kirinyaga, and she's there supporting Raila, ODM. This is what was the opposition party. Of course, you had a lot of leaders from Ukambani. You had Alfred Mutua. You had Kivutha Kibwana was there. So it's provided an opportunity for people to align themselves politically. So we're now seeing which direction in terms of succession politics in 2022. We're seeing the direction of things to come.
And what is this direction?
Well, you're seeing the support, because what tends to happen, and sadly, is these leaders pull with them a voting bloc, usually the tribal voting bloc. So you're seeing which
Do we have another voting bloc other than the tribal one, Jerry?
No, not at the moment. Ideally, what we would want to create is an issue-based voting bloc. So some people maybe are a Green Party and about the environment and they vote in that direction. Others maybe are socialists and prefer, wealth redistribution. But we don't have those tribes yet. What Ruto has tried to push through, which is it's commendable, is the idea of sort of the class system, the haves and have-nots. He's tried to introduce that narrative, and he talks about the dynasties and the hustlers and so on. So he's tried to introduce that. But I still think our tribal affiliation trumps any of those sentiments of the class system.
28 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the situation, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads this morning.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
So Monday morning, let's see what's happening as you wake up this morning and get onto the roads. Everything seems to be so clear on Mombasa Road as well as Langata Road. There's no traffic right now, and it is clearer and clearer. Interestingly, as we come to the end of the year, we're going to see less vehicles on the road. All the way from JKIA to the CBD, it took about 10 minutes for a few people this morning, and so it's not much of a problem. Same thing on Gong Road right now. Not much traffic. People are getting off that road in record time, as it were. All right, so nothing much to report right now, except the fact that if you are on the road, you'll get to where you're going really quickly. It might change about half an hour, but we will be sure to let you know. The number to call is 0719-012-600. We're going to keep you moving this morning, and that's for sure.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
And how are you doing? Thank you very much for choosing the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Coming to you from Nairobi on 94.4. We're in Mombasa on 87.9, 102.5 Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. This morning, we are trying to deconstruct what we saw happening in Kibera over the weekend. So, Raila Odinga's political rallies in Kibera were attended by several leaders from other parts of the country. And this included, how many governors did we see? Like 5 governors?
It became something more of a national rally. It was like one of these huge things you saw prior to an election, a national election, not election.
Not a by-election for a local constituency.
No.
Yeah, there's a number of things we can pick out. I think firstly it's a microcosm of sort of the nation at the moment in terms of divisions and party alignments and realignments. But also it's Raila has to be very careful when he's bringing this sort of support to the table and making it that public, because it's suggestive that he's panicked a little bit. This is his backyard.
I was about to ask that.
As we say. Having said that, I still think ODM will actually take this seat. But he has panicked. The Mariga candidate and being fielded by Ruto, of course, has sent shivers down his spine.
So you buy what Ruto was saying?
What did Ruto say? It depends. He said a number of things.
Somebody in the bedroom and seeking support.
In
the bedroom.
He'd promised them a lot of goodies if they picked Mariga. And Mariga, of course, has his appeal for the youth. He's a well-known footballer internationally. Of course, it's a Luya candidate in that constituency. There's a Luya vote, so it serves to split a vote there. But there's a few
Jerry,
other...
You actually believe that because someone has played football in the international arena, and that because we've seen a former footballer becoming a president of a country.
I didn't even draw parallels.
No, I am the one who's drawn the
right.
parallel. Because that's the example you would take. So you assume that a Kenyan voter would be impressed.
Absolutely. The youth, there's the sort of fame factor there. That's why he was picked. It's not that Mariga has
There's
any
a
political
recognizability.
experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, there is a
Name recognition for
recognizability.
starters. These are fans. These are the youth. For them, footballers are heroes. So I would have thought that would be a major factor. That
So you're saying it is for that same reason that because young people like music that we have a musician.
Absolutely.
who
They have
was
the
an
influence
MP.
over them. Absolutely. There's the name recognition. They have the audience as it is. And there's some influence over them. Absolutely.
It's gone a long way. We're not introducing Mariga to the constituents. We're basically saying, so here is Mariga. We've brought you Mariga. We have Mariga here.
And he was their hero for the longest.
The point
We
I
have
was,
Mariga,
the
right?
point, the
An
point I was
international
getting at
footballer.
is the distinct dichotomy that voters have exhibited. For a long time, people who vied for political positions would talk about development. And we've seen people who even have a good development track record not being voted in. We've seen people who you couldn't understand why it is. Well, with hindsight, you may be able to understand. Some it's because they're revolting against the party. Some it's because probably the likability factor, that particular individual just liked by the people. So all I'm saying is that voters tend to be a little more discerning than this. They may like you as a footballer, but it doesn't mean they will like you as a politician.
No, of course.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That's why he's had to also build up his campaign and try or attempt to sort of talk politics. We've seen him fail miserably, but in terms of the likability factor, that's way up high. And of course, he's well known in terms of name recognition. And then there's the hero factor. For a lot of people, this is somebody that would aspire to. This is somebody who's made a lot of money and made it on a global platform. But interestingly, I want to pick out a few intrigues from this meeting or this support for Raila that we saw over the weekend in terms of politics. Of course, it was also an opportunity not just for the leaders to align themselves, but for instance, with Waigoro, when you're looking at succession politics, you're also looking at Kikuyu leadership. And she is the first to come forward and make a stand, especially when it comes to the rift within the Jubilee Party. So it's very telling because there is the succession politics of the Kikuyu Party in terms of a Kikuyu leader. So she's taken that opportunity, and we're now beginning to see her emerge as a leader for Central. Kalonzo cannot be overlooked, or his presence, or rather absence, in this instance, cannot be overlooked. You had a lot of Kamba leaders come together, and Kalonzo was not there. So, could this be the beginning of sort of his fall? would be very interesting to see who he'll throw himself at or offer himself to in terms of coming to somebody as a voting bloc. And I have a mild suspicion it might be Ruto, because this will be Ruto's sort of only inroad into the Kamba region, into the Kamba vote. So very telling there. But definitely a glimpse of things to come in 2022, no doubt, when we see these realignments. It's
you were
very
saying
telling.
something about wondering why Raila has exposed his hand so early in the game.
What I was saying is that there's a suggestion here that he did panic with Mariga coming into the political arena in Kibra. This is his
With the kind of vibe that the Mariga campaign has received, has generated on the ground.
Yes, because I mean, also from the Ruto sort of strategy, it's been very strategic when they start fronting other candidates. So they have an A and C candidate that I personally believe is being fronted and sponsored by Ruto to further split the ODM vote. So it's been very strategic. And there's been, of course, talk of the voter register and that being tampered with. They've removed, or according to Awalo, his assertions were that he was claiming that they've removed voters and put new voters, because when they asked for the voter registration, the IEBC just gave them a list of names and they couldn't correlate that with previous voters because they didn't give them their ID numbers. So there seems to be some sort of
some games,
some tampering with the voter registration.
Some ongoing games.
When one complains about the voter registration, it reminds me very sharply of the issue of the servers in the last election. Should we open the servers? Should we not? What is in the servers and what is not? The question I'd like to ask, because I'm asking myself, is how exactly would, say, a Jubilee win in Kibra affect Raila's fortunes?
Well,
I
now
think what it was being looked at in terms of what would be a dent in what was long seen as his power over this particular area, or the kind of power, kind of the influence that he was able to then wield over Kibra. It has been touted, or even the reality that it was a stronghold in terms of support for Raila. So, I mean, if a win for Jubilee happened in Kibra, then it would be telling then of his loose or his loss on the grip of power in this particular area. I think that in terms of the gravity of it, that would be it. I don't see it as anything more than that, as opposed to a loss on the grip of power.
From 1997, when Raila first decided to vie for presidency in 2013, this is a man, if we were to look at his history of losses, those are three... They are losses, yes.
Have we got enough time?
No, I'm simply saying with every loss, the man seems to have gained more power than I've lost it. Every time he loses, he seems to gain more power. So how exactly would one other loss now affect his power? That's what I'm actually trying to ask.
Think
it has an impact, City.
I'm asking.
Remember the Kipipiri by-election in the Moi years in the late 90s? So there was a by-election in Kipipiri constituency. And so it was a clear contest between Moi's, Kanu, and DP of Moi Kibaki. And Moi went all out to campaign for this particular one. In fact, he placed JJ Kamoto to be the man who's spearheading this campaign. The point man for this campaign. DP eventually won. And what impact did it have in terms of the optics for the president? The president had actually gone out there to campaign. He had initiated projects. In fact, remember, he had done something like, ensure that there was power electricity poles that had been planted along the way. I'm bringing Mandeleo to Kipipiri. And the people still voted for DP. What did that do to the optics? Of course, it didn't diminish his power. He was still the president, but the optics.
Explain. What do you mean by the optics?
It
came out as a big loss to the president, because the president has come out to campaign, and yet the people have voted for the opposition party, the opposition candidate.
And also, generally, the electorate likes to be on the winning side. So if we accept that Kibra is actually a microcosm of what's to come, or what the nation's mood is, then in Raila losing, you'll find a lot of people will start leaning towards Ruto, believe it or not. That's one of the consequences. You're asking what the consequences are.
Yes,
so in 2022, you'll find people saying, well, actually, he wasn't doing too well, or he doesn't have the support we thought he had. A lot of people go for the winning team, and it reinforces the perception that Ruto has a lot of support from the country. But if we look at things as they stand, if we look at the individual governors and look at them as people who are going to bring voting blocks into the fold, even for 2022, you find that so far it seems that Raila would have the central vote, with Waiguru coming out quite strongly there. He seems to have the Kamba vote. We saw 2 governors, or was it 3? There was images of Charity Ngilu there as well.
We had all governors from Ukambani.
Yes, absolutely. So very telling. And then in terms of, we've seen Oparanya as well back him up. So there's
You've seen the Kisii
a
governor.
chunk, absolutely. So that's very telling as in terms of politics and not political intrigues, but understanding who is supporting Raila or even against Ruto.
Now
This could be a
imagine-
stand against Ruto, that people come out in support of Raila. So you might not be Raila's biggest fan, but you're a heavy critic of Ruto, and this is a platform for you to throw yourself into the arena.
I think it's typical of the enemy is my friend that you'd be looking at in this case. Not necessarily that they were supporting Raila, but or
were
rather that they were against
Well,
Ruto,
that's
or
one-
vice versa.
that's one
Not
narrative.
necessarily against Ruto, but
That's
supporting
one,
Raila.
That's
Yeah.
one narrative.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
just consider the amount of airtime and visibility this particular by-election has gained nationwide. If you're an astute politician, again, and you're eyeing 2022 and beyond, would this not be a perfect place for you to sort of like show your face?
Oh, absolutely. I
And
think
it
this
is,
is where
and
you
this
would
is
want
why
to
they're showing
audition
their
on this
faces.
That's why they're
platform.
there.
And I think it's clear that you can also go ahead and say that at this point, if you were not there, just yesterday, for example, if you were not there, then in terms of where your place was or with which power then you would be able to command a particular position in 2022, then would be very wanting.
Remember, each of these governors that you speak of has at one time or the other, with the exception of Ongwae, talked about wanting to be president. Please remember,
Yes.
okay? So it's not just a question of trying to support Raila.
When I said that, it could be going against Ruto. So it's not
No.
just the
Or
Raila.
Or their own
No, no, no.
personal,
Their
their own
position
That's what
personal,
said
even if they're
Jerry,
positioning
what I
themselves,
am
own
they're
saying-
going
personal
against Ruto.
aspirations, their own personal aspirations definitely come out to
We
play
said this
here.
earlier. I
Which
think that
coincidentally would be going against Ruto, who's running for presidency.
they're
So
basically
it could be
saying
that they're supporting Raila, but it could be also that they're stating their position against Ruto, whether from a political perspective as a competitor in that I'll be running. Either way, they're not supporting Ruto. For them
Yes.
to have appeared
No.
there, they're not supporting Ruto.
That wasn't my point, actually. No. I was looking at it singularly. as-
Personal, yeah.
Yes, something that would benefit them
Individually.
while also appearing to do other things, but them individually.
Absolutely.
The number
By the
one
time
thing.
Waiguru is coming out, she's felt in terms of succession politics and central, she's now coming out as the leader. She's emerging as this could possibly be the new leader for the Kikuyu. So definitely a personal move there or something to be gained
This
there.
is what I
So
was saying. They're looking for
mutually
where there's-
beneficial
They're
disappearance.
looking for where there is space. They've gone to the camp that appears to have space that can accommodate them, and they've seen the other camp does not have space
No,
for them.
I think Takataka would have a lot of space for Waiguru.
No, they appear not to have space for them. Otherwise, she'd
I
have
beg
gone
to
there.
differ.
She'd have gone there.
No.
She has come to an area where she sees here I may
No,
actually
she's-
get space.
She's representing the sentiments of a lot of people here.
Which people?
By the time she's going there, she's a leader of a whole
County.
county, Kirinyaga.
Yes.
So she's representing the sentiments and also driving the sentiments.
Is
So
she
it's
really
both
representing her
ways.
sentiments or
It's,
her
it's
own?
both. Or driving it? A little bit of both, I
It's
think.
her own. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. We're trying to deconstruct what we saw in Kibra this past weekend. There's a number to call now. The phone lines are open. 8:13 minutes to 7.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
All right. 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, and the phone lines are now open 0719 012 600. We're looking at what happened in Kibra over the weekend, and CT Muga is saying if you look at what happened in Kibra over the last weekend, you see what politicians tend to always do. It's basically a season.
I'm saying it is a season. Jerry will be talking about succession. My topic is not succession. It's the intrigues of politics and how deceptive they can be. I'm simply saying that we've had alignments, realignments, alignments, realignments, and this is just one more indication of realignment. The only significant change we have this time is this. For the first time, you have a situation where, one, we have a president who will no longer be president come 2022, and there is talk about changing the constitution. In 2002, we're talking about a new constitution. That was also changing the constitution. So we're talking about 20 years down the line, 20 plus. We have a situation where the discussion of the constitution has come into being again. And with the coming of this amendments that people are talking about, the change in the constitution, it's not just realignment or repositioning. It's a question of a complete change within the outlook and the positioning of the political thinking of the country. Because we are seeing alignments that previously you could say they haven't been seen, yes, but actually not in the way this particular grouping is formulating itself. There are those who feel that Raila is thinking of retirement. Politicians never really retire. They may just not be in the public domain, they may not be in your face on a daily basis, but they never really retire. Now, Eric, there's something I wanted to point out to you, even as we continue. The Kipipiri by-election. Central, in that particular point in our time, the ruling party never really got anybody elected in that part of the world.
Yep.
They never did. Kamodo was always nominated. And if he was nominated and he was appointment in Kipipiri, the likelihood of losing was greater than that of winning at any given point. So it isn't as though if they strewed telephone posts or electricity posts, as though it was going to change. The outcome of that election was clear.
Predetermined almost?
Predetermined, because entire region had never voted, simply never voted for Kanu. So it wasn't going to change.
What made Moise take everything on this then?
That is a question that I have asked myself on many occasions.
He saw an opportunity.
No. I don't think it was more the opportunity. Ask yourself, which year was it? 1997. What was happening in 1997?
An election.
Yes, but it was not your average election. Remember, that's the year that we ushered in multipartism.
92.
When I say ushered in, that was the first year we're having an election prior to the promulgation of the bringing into being of multipartism. So it wasn't just Kanu deciding what it could do. This was a situation where one had to grandstand and one had to show one's power. A lot had changed. Now, if we bring it to the present, and we're talking about that alignment, the question is, what really has changed in the politics of Kibera? Will that particular election determine what ODM is going to do? I am saying no, it won't. And I'm saying that what the politicians who are there have seen with great clarity is the visibility factor. Njeri has given a perspective of it, and she's absolutely spot on. You've given a perspective, Ndu has given a perspective, but I'm focusing on their personal interests and how Kibra provides them with an opportunity to have a national viewing, to say, excuse me, we also exist in this space and this is what we're going to do.
It's interesting that these constituency elections, actually, this particular, it was what it did, when I look at this, what it has done is that it has created a platform to do just that. Yes, 2 years is still a long time, but it has created a platform for people, for a lot of these politicians to basically demarcate their positions in terms of what they want to do and who they want to align with. Yes, go along with the winning team, but also to declare basically that in terms of power, they're not going to let back. They want to be seen, they want to remain relevant, and this was the opportunity for them to do that. If they did not come forth, and really, unfortunately, what it looks like is that whoever did not come forward yesterday on this platform, then basically will lose some form of relevance.
Actually, no, it's too early in the game for that. What I am pointing out towards is that even with this alignment, expect it to break up and expect other realignments. This is how it works out. This is just one show. There'll be other shows. Remember I said it's fluid. There's going to be a lot of movement. And these movements don't indicate who is in power, who isn't. That may be us, but they indicate the interests of the individuals who are moving around. If this was a new game, we would say with certainty that ABCD is about. This isn't a new game. It's happened before in this country.
And remember, there's something that's going to keep this thread going, because we have with the BBI, this is also the BBI team. You can see that sort of emerging in the background. So with a BBI coming up and a possible referendum, you will see people aligning themselves, to certain politicians with regards to the referendum. Sadly, it won't be issue-based. It won't be, people having a good understanding of the of the amendments, proposed amendments, and deciding this is what we want as Kenyans. No, we're still going to follow certain leaders. So the fact that there's an interim, I would call, election, will actually keep this thread together in terms of alignment. So what you'll find is it will be strengthened even further as we campaign now for these amendments during the referendum. And as a result, it will continue to grow. It's not something that's likely to disintegrate and go back into different splinter groups. This is a team that is being put together clearly for BBI, no doubt. And as a result of that, it will run into 2022. But Ruto here also, sadly, has suffered a serious blow to his 2022 ambitions, because this has exposed him quite majorly in terms of the support he has from different regions. Ukambani, there's nobody who's been left out, as we say, all the governors. So it's suggesting that he has no power base, or he has no following in Ukambani. We're now seeing Central this is quite vocal. It's quite a statement for Igoro to appear. I mean, they're holding hands with on the front page here of the Standard. She's right next to Raila, holding hands and sort of celebrating together. So that's very telling, and we'll see if, the flock follows, so to speak. So that's the inroads that we felt previously Ruto might have made. He does a lot of groundwork. Ruto is in a perpetual campaign
working.
Electioneering mode. Absolutely. He's I saw him with the border guys. So he's appealing to a slightly different demographic, and probably trying to, as I keep saying, go against this this grain of tribal politics and bring in the class politics. I think it's too premature for that in Kenya. We're still more affiliated with our tribe than we are with sort of the class divide, the disparity, wealth disparity, which is what Ruto is trying to capitalize on.
If we go by what City is saying about, these politicians are selfish. So, of course, when they're going out there, they're looking for their own selfish interests. Why isn't any of them seeing an opportunity to go the Ruto way when there's no one else, where you can actually go there and be the leading light? For example, if you think about the three Ukambani governors, so who comes out stronger here? Is it Ngilu? Is it Kivuta? Is it Mutua? If on the contrary, for example, if one of them went to Ruto, then they would stand out. Ruto with Mutua, or Ruto with Ngilu, Ruto with Kivuta.
Remember, there's the Kalonzo factor that we can't overlook. I think together, collectively, they feel they have better bargaining power. Collectively, he's nowhere because, of course, he's undecided as usual, and he will decide at some point. But there is that factor. He's been sort of the leader of the Kamba community for the longest, and you can see them coming together to try and turn things around and change that. And I think they can only do this collectively. He still does have a big following. Of course, that's waning with the youth leaning towards Alfred Mutua, and you've got Kivuta Kibwana because of his
track record.
Because of his track record, his development track record, he's very popular as well. And then Charity Ngilu, we've heard from callers actually calling in and saying what a good job she's done. So them coming together gives them a greater collective bargaining power and more power, basically, to oust Kalonzo as the leader in that region.
And then as we get closer to 2022,
they might have some internal wranglings.
When
absolutely.
each of them wants to position themselves above the other.
And this is what I was talking about last week. I think Charity Ngilu will emerge as a leader of that community if they can come together.
And one of the other, two will go to Ruto.
No, I don't think they'll go to Ruto. I don't think they'll look to split those votes. I think Mutua has time on his side in terms of, he's still a young, sort of energetic leader, and he can look to 2027 and so on. But I think, yes, I see Charity Ngilu. I was talking about this, was it 2-3 weeks ago? Emerging as the leader from that region. I think they might just oust Kalonzo.
0719-012-600. We're trying to, look at what was happening in Kibra over the weekend. And CT Muga's line, for example, this morning is basically saying, this is a season. Politicians go with seasons. This is a particular season that this is happening. We will see another season coming up. This is the short rains. Or is it the long rain, CT?
These aren't even the rains. This is just a drizzle.
This is just a drizzle. It's just a it's just a rain-carrying wind.
When there's something like the BBI and the report emanating from the findings of the group come out, you'll find a different discussion emerging. And
I think this is the preamble to that. There's no doubt that this is the BBI team. There's no doubt about that.
This is BBI.
Absolutely. So, and as I say, that will be the thread that holds this caucus, as we can call it, together until 2022. In the run up to that, there's going to be a lot of sort of political excitement around this, rallying up support and the euphoria that comes with. People do love elections in this country. So in the run up to a referendum, if we do have one following the report from the BBI, you'll see that this caucus remains together, and that's going to be the thread that weaves us into 2022. So I don't see these guys disintegrating. I don't see further realignments here.
That's assuming that the handshake holds.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's one thing as well. There's also something that also emerges, that constantly we see Raila emerging as one who's working with other politicians.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've seen it before with CORD, with NASA, now with his team that is cobbling up together, that he wants to be seen to be working with other politicians, where he's, of course, the leader of them, but he's working with other politicians. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeing the same thing happening with Ruto. Why hasn't Ruto, for example, appeared with anybody else in these campaigns?
If you look at Ruto's support, I was thinking about that. He's got a lot of support in Northeastern. We can't deny that. But his people aren't that vocal. In Northeastern, they don't come into the fore when it's about national politics. They don't come into national politics.
At all.
Duale is quite outspoken.
We'll look at this in the next hour. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. Good morning.
All right. Well, things have definitely changed. Coming out of Waiyaki Way, heading into the city centre, traffic has definitely built up right about 7 o'clock. And that means that it's not Easy Street anymore. All right. Thika Road from Muthaiga is moving, but it's moving very slowly. Cabanas towards the GM traffic is bumper to bumper, and that is on Mombasa Road, trying to head into the city centre. Those who got out before this hour are the ones who enjoyed Mombasa Road this morning. And jam now starts all the way from the Gateway Mall on Mombasa Road. Waiyaki Way was, as they say, teke, but now not anymore. All right, coming off of Langata Road was smoother earlier, but now we do have some traffic getting round to the T Mall roundabout. It's Monday morning traffic that has just started to show its face. Let's see how that pans out as we go along. Trying to keep you moving this morning. If you see anything that we should know about, give us a call on 0719 012 600. Let's see what Monday morning traffic looks like after this.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
it's
day.
2 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning, and thank you for choosing the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, right here on Spice FM on 94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi, and we live stream on Facebook every morning, Spice FM KE, on our website www.spicefm.co.ke, and on our Twitter handle. This is hashtag The Situation Room, and our Twitter handle is SpiceFMKE. The phone lines are now open, 0719 012 600. City Muga is saying what we are seeing in Kibra is nothing. This is just the beginning of many things that are going to happen over and over and over again. This is just political.
It's political realignment.
This is it.
Yes, and it's not realignment in the sense that political parties are realigning. No, it's politicians making movement.
To what end, if you think this is just temporary?
No, the alignment isn't temporary. What is temporary is this particular association that you see. I am saying that it will not stay together. I'm saying it will change.
Okay, I beg to differ there. I think I'm of the belief that given the BBI and the potential or the likelihood of a referendum, this is the team, and this will take us through to 2022. There'll be a lot of excitement around this. But also, of course, it's a litmus test for Ruto. What we're seeing is very little support. Before we went into a break, we're talking about where are his vocal supporters? Why doesn't he have any governors rallying up around him and so on? And one of the regions that he's very popular is Northeastern. Now, Northeastern leaders, generally, we don't see them on the national platform in terms of governors coming out and being this vocal. Perhaps that's one of the reasons we're not seeing his supporters coming out. We did see Joho come in for Raila, for ODM. Of course, he's very senior in the party and very loyal to Raila. But that seals in the Muslim vote. Remember, there's a big Nubian community that's Muslim, so that seals that. And you've got to look at this from sort of all sorts of different angles. That appeals to them. And I think this could be an angle that Ruto could have gone through with support from Northeastern to have somebody come and talk to the Nubian community. There's a big Muslim community there that a Muslim...
Would Joho be it, really, when it comes to...
He was it. He's the Muslim factor has been brought in.
Yes, but would Johor be representative of the Muslim factor?
Absolutely, the brotherhood is there
among
for
the
real.
Nubians.
Amongst the Muslims, yes, Muslims don't have the creed color issues that the rest of us do. Islam is Islam. Muslims are Muslims. There's no color they see. There's no sort of differentiation. You're Muslim. That's
That's not entirely true.
I think that's stronger. Well, on the surface, at least, I think that's stronger in Islam than it is in other religions. In that the brotherhood, the fact that you have or you share a religion is.
Would you
actually
say
quite
that
strong.
the Muslims would listen more to a politician than their imams?
I think by the time Joho is speaking to them, there's some sort of
They have a connection.
Absolutely, there's been some talk with imams and so on. So, but I think Joho was brought in as the Muslim factor. I don't think coast region and that there's people living in Kibera from the coast region and he's coming to appeal to them. No, I think it was to speak directly to the Nubians who are Muslim.
Do you think that the Nubians see themselves more as Nubians than as Muslims?
This is it. I think they see themselves as Muslims first and foremost.
More than they are as Nubians.
I think with Islam as a religion, it is your number one calling. It is your number one identity. These are my sentiments, my personal views.
If you look at the coast, for instance, where you have a large Muslim population is in the south coast. The Digos, the Drumas, you find there are more Muslims there. And yet you will find leaders who've been elected and they're not Muslim. And the majority of people who are in that area are actually Muslim.
Remember, there's multiple factors at play here. I'm just highlighting one of them, which is the Muslim factor will come into it. The Nubian community needs to be appealed, or they need to appeal to the Nubian community. And I think that was Joho's role here.
I'm trying to say that the Nubian community would be aligned towards Raila, irrespective of whatever faith they have. So they do not need a second person to sort of like...
They already have a connection with Raila.
Yes, with Raila. So they don't need a second person to help glue it together.
I think when you have an interrupting force such as Ruto, then you need all the help you can get. And this was a factor that can't be overlooked, the fact that there's a big Muslim community there. Because what else would Joho's role have been? There's not, if you look at...
It's party. Is there any place, any significant gathering that, say, Raila has been in that represents the party that Joho has been absent from? He's a deputy. He is one of the deputy party leaders. So his role as a party leader is significant. But what I'm questioning is, yes, he is Muslim, but would people listen to him because he's Muslim, or would people listen to him because he's an ODM?
I think a bit of both, because remember, Ruto is on the ground also trying to win votes from the Nubians. So this has an element of appeal to it. I think they have been strategic in bringing Joho in. I think he does appeal to the Muslim voter. There is that. Definitely.
Numerically, there are more Luyas in Kibra than there are Nubians.
Absolutely, and that's why we saw Paranya. I mean,
Okay.
this thing has different angles and
Oparanya-
different dynamics.
Oparanya is there, yes. You have Mudavadi there. Owalo, who is a Luo. There are significant numbers of Luos in Kibra. The other group that is significant in number is the Kikuyu, but there is no direct Kikuyu candidate in Kibra.
Yeah.
Okay? So the question, you see, I think you can see where I'm coming from. I'm asking the question. If you're talking about a leaning, I'm simply asking, which is the stronger one, the party leaning or the religious leaning? That's really what I'm asking. Because
I would say the party leaning, but the religion does come into it, no doubt, especially when there's a disruptive force. You have Ruto on the ground trying to pull votes from the Nubians. So if a Muslim comes in and says, hey guys, I'm on this side, you'll find that will actually draw sort of votes back if they were being lost, or keep votes intact if they were about to be lost.
you know, not very long ago, we had a by-election in Kericho, which is supposed to be Ruto's backyard. Okay? And if we're to go by the narrative that we keep hearing, it's a place he's extremely popular in. Now, that should have been a walk in the park. They should just have won. They didn't just win. That's the whole point. They had to labor and labor and labor, and questions arose. Now, I'm talking about a situation where we are in an urban setting. We are going into an election, and we already know, prior to all this Jubilee, ODM issues, the predisposition towards that particular county was in a certain direction. The by-election is because the MP who was from a particular party had won it, but he passed away. He won it. Now, if you look at the history of by-elections, what tends to happen if there is no one who can succeed that person who is known? You found, for instance, someone dies, the wife takes over. Someone dies, the sister takes over. Someone dies, the brother takes over. Now someone has died. If we're to go by that pattern, the likelihood is that the brother would take over. Okay? If we go by party lines, we would say there's a party that was in place, the party would take over, because it's not as though the voters would change. I'm questioning the disruptive influence. Apart from the visual aspect of it, the real disruptive influence of someone like the deputy presidents. Large crowds for a rally are no indication whatsoever of the leaning of any grouping. You have a rally on Saturday, people are idle.
That the Mariga effect is non-existent? Are you trying to suggest that
I'm trying to
Ruto
question
fielding a candidate is not has not shaken Raila?
As you do that, let me remind people the phone lines are open. 0719-012-600 at 0719-012-600. Answer that question, CT.
I am saying she asked two questions. Jerry never asks one question. She always asks two or three
There's
questions.
one question, A and B.
Yes, and just as you're answering A, she goes to C.
Yeah.
So let me answer them both. I personally don't think Raila is shaken at all. Not in the slightest.
You don't think he's
Not at all.
he's reacting
Not at all.
to the force that is Ruto?
Not at all. He's just politicking. He's doing what
Right.
he does best. And that's why I brought in the earlier issue was, how will it actually change his standing?
If
as
Raila
a
wasn't
leader?
out there campaigning, put it this way, if Raila wasn't out there campaigning and Ruto was, Mariga would most likely win. Never sort of get
Would it have
too
an impact
comfortable.
on this particular election?
If you are a politician and you understand politics, one of the things about politics, and you both said, is what you call the optics. How do you lose an opportunity such as this, where
To
the
address
entire
you.
nation is actually glued?
Watching
Listen,
what is going to
can you
happen.
How do
imagine-
you miss out on that?
Can you imagine?
do what?
Can you imagine
To address
the
people.
impact?
To address people.
To address
Yes.
people
So
and
you
also show
going
where your
there addressing
alignment
people.
is.
No,
Why don't
Raila
you bring
has
in-
plenty of platforms to address people. If Raila sat back and watched Ruto sort of run around looking for votes and actually just sat back and did nothing and still won, that is more of a powerful message
Yeah,
than
yes.
Raila actually campaigning with this sort
Coming
of
out
rigor.
and as
Let
often
me
as we're
ask.
seeing. So this past weekend he's been there.
In the
Friday,
same way when we
Saturday,
talked
Sunday.
about the
Eric, let
Kericho
me ask the
by-election.
question. Let me ask the question. The Langata was considered Raila's fiefdom as well, isn't it?
The big Langata.
Yes. ODM lost, isn't it? Do we even discuss it? I'm trying to say these are things that happen. They may be momentous at that point in time. It's forgotten, and life goes on. It more or less, it's like it goes back to factory setting.
But then, how does it play on it? And how does it something like that? Then, I have to ask the question: how does it play on his political strength in the future? And we've seen that, if anything, this man has come out even stronger than before.
That's what I'm
asking. To the point whereby he is holding hands with the government, and we're not talking about just in opposition, holding hands with the government, and in terms of decisions that are being made, he's directly involved in terms of moving the country forward.
So right now he's powerful enough. He does not need to actually go and campaign like this.
Actually,
no, I'm saying that it would be political stupidity not to campaign.
Yes.
With this, like this.
Yes.
Even the strongest, you have the strongest still advertising. It doesn't take away from the fact that they are the strongest.
But why not just
they still
appear by
have to
yourself?
remain relevant.
No, but
you still have to remain relevant. Why would you sit and do that?
Why would he sit back? What possible reason? This is a by-election.
CT, you contradict yourself because you.
No, you say I do. So tell me how I contradict myself.
You mentioned the Kericho by-election and the excitement around it, and the fact that it was considered Ruto's backyard, but yet the amount of work he had to do in terms of campaigning. Ruto was camped out in Kericho during that by-election. Whereas if it's your backyard, you should sit quite comfortably, not sit on your laurels, but you sit knowing that, we're okay here. Anyway. Absolutely. So you've actually highlighted that as something worth noting. And then we come back and it's exactly the same scenario in Kibra, and you're saying, well, no, actually it's of no consequence, the fact that he's having to work so hard.
No.
He's doing it just so that he has... Raila has enough platforms to talk to the nation if he wants. He's not doing this because he's using it as an opportune moment to talk to the nation or to talk to his supporters.
Forgive me, you've twisted my argument. I brought in Kericho to point out something. The discussion we're having when I brought this in was the significance of rallies that Ruto is holding, and that he is actually fracturing. He is a factor. That was what I was saying. When you are a factor, and I said he is a factor in his backyard. This is a point I was trying to make. And I was saying that it wasn't a walk in the park.
Yeah, you know why? Because Isaac Ruto was the disruptive factor in that particular one. With Gideon Moi. This is what was happening.
Then he wasn't the power that he claims to be.
And that's what is going to emerge in Kibra this particular time.
That's what I'm saying.
So are you saying that in Kibra that Raila is not the power that he purports to be?
We have a disruptive
if he loses, because of the fact that he has this opposition that is clear during the actual election.
No, what I'm saying, in this particular election, Ruto is the disruptor. Just like Isaac Ruto was a disruptor in the particular by-election that you're talking about, Ruto is a disruptor here, and that's why DP had to work very hard. That's the same reason why Raila is working very hard in this particular one. It's because there's a disruptor on the ground. If it was just ANC, by the way, and the other, how many? 23 other candidates.
So you think that if Ruto was not playing the politics the way he is, then Raila would see no need to operate politically.
Raila would not have risen to this level of this particular campaign. He would not have.
What they realized, sorry, CT, go on.
When we had that by-election I was talking about in Kericho, there was no BBI. The president then wasn't on his last term. I'm simply trying to point out the circumstances were different.
There was a guy who was a chairman of the COG who was bringing in an issue of a guy who was bringing the issue of Pesa Machinari.
COG. Not BOM.
No, not BOM, COG. He was bringing the issue of Pesa Machinari and all, and he's trying to be the champion of devolution.
COG being Council
of Governors, right? And he was trying to be the champion of devolution, and devolution was this new thing that was captivating the country, and he was using that, and that's what he was doing in Kericho.
Eric,
Kericho was quite poignant. Let's not overlook that, because I just want to go further into it. You have to remember, in Kericho, it's just one community, isn't it? It's the Kalenjin.
It is one community. There's no diversity.
Absolutely. So there, what was happening as well is, I think, the struggle for power within the Kalenjin community. Because, I mean, there's people who still say that hasn't been fully decided. In terms of even sort of who's taking over Moi, let's say, when you talk about Kalenjin
politics. Who is the supreme leader? The jury's out on that one.
Absolutely. And I think Kericho highlighted this fact, because this is the Kalenjin community, and yet they're not all following Ruto as he would have expected. He had to work very hard to get that. So Kericho did have its significance as well.
There was the other vibe of the particular community around there. Right, the Kipsigis versus what they're feeling, whether the other communities, whether their community is actually getting enough of the big cake that the Kalenjin has delivered, whether it's actually getting the dividends
Is
of
it
out of
trickling
that.
down?
So it was coming down to that level.
It had been down
But
to that
Ruto-
level for quite a while.
Yes.
If you are a leader of a party like ODM and you've had 2 elections in which you have actually lost, one in your own backyard, one in a town like a metropolis like Nairobi, do you think it would be wise, whether Ruto was there or not, to actually sit back and
not do anything?
not
No,
participate
you have a
in
point.
Not just
And
participate
even-
in the politics of the day. It's something that would be akin to political suicide.
It would
almost.
be suicide.
Yeah.
And also, what would you be telling your followers? That these are things that you don't particularly have an interest in, especially when you consider even before these elections. The ODM by-elections were a complete fiasco. Complete. Raila himself had to weigh it in and say, look, folks, this thing was a fiasco. We're refunding
Your
everybody
money.
who participated.
Yeah.
Yes. So, against such a background, you actually think that it would have been prudent for him to sit back and say, this is my fiefdom. Let me sit back and watch the grass grow.
I mean, you have a point there. He does have to do something. Even Coca-Cola advertises and spends millions on marketing, even if, of course, they have the biggest market share.
They fight everything.
They still spend billions
They
on
even say something when they have nothing to say.
I had never understood this
Yeah.
until someone who works for Coca-Cola told me they consider every beverage competition. Water is competition.
Even
tea is
within their
competition.
own conglomerates,
Yes,
even
yes.
within themselves,
Now, that's
they
their
have the
mindset.
beverages fighting against each other,
Yes.
and they own all of them. So
That's
you
why
can
they
imagine.
came up with their own water. They came up with their own brand
fruit
of
juices,
tea or
yeah.
fruit. That's what they do.
It's interesting that the things we saw playing out, and it was clear that we had interpersonal or personal leadership coming through. What we did not see then in terms of moving forward in terms of governance and politics is the people. We saw the people coming for in the whole fanfare, coming out and supporting. In terms of crowds, we had large numbers coming out, and this is again indicative of what we see on the country, in the country as a whole, when it then comes to people-led power, people-led politics, people-led governance in terms of what is going to be done for the people of Kibra. And I mean, the people of Kibra are not. They understand exactly what is happening, but I still think that they are looking for somebody who is actually going to come and change or improve the status quo of their particular constituency. And it's clear again that the leadership of this country is all really personal interest based. And when it comes to the decisions that will be made for the better development of the country and the upliftment of the people and raising the profile of the people's development, that is still really rather low on the totem pole. And I think this is a cause for concern. It was clear yesterday that we're seeing people in terms of leadership realigning themselves, aligning themselves, making themselves relevant when it comes to political power, but then again forgetting or choosing to ignore what should be done when it comes to people. And I think that is a factor that should not be ignored.
What is it that was ignored about the people?
It's just on about the issue. This
Issue-based
campaign
campaigning.
should be issue-based.
Right.
The thing is, everybody is promising development. Everybody's promising the same thing. People are
We
coming
had
in and
Ruto
talk about
promising the development
sanitation.
if they voted his person
Absolutely.
in, which
Well,
should
they're
not be
saying
the
if we
case.
come in,
should
this
be
is what we'll do.
It should be. They're saying vote for us and
So-
we'll do this, and this is something that they
This is
are
what we
owed
stand for.
anyway.
These
That's
are-
your job.
This is our agenda. These are the issues that we stand for. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. And what we do every morning here is we discuss issues and not just personalities. 0719 012 600. It's 21 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
22 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Thank you very much for choosing Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, right here on 94.4 Spice FM in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, in Eldoret, 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, Malindi, 97.7, and we are live streaming on Facebook and Spice FM KE, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Now, Today, the government has promised some changes. You're going to have visible change in some government institutions. And this is specifically at the registration, the civil registration services. When you go to register for birth certificate or death certificate, unlike what you were seeing in the past, it's going to be a streamlined operation where you have NYS personnel who are coming in here to assist. We'll have officers who are supposed to be working like they should. When you come and apply for a birth certificate, you should get it within a short time. When you come and apply for the same death certificate, you should get it within a short time. This is because Interior and Coordination of National Government, CS, Fred Matiang'i, led a crackdown on that particular area after many complaints from the public. And this is what he was saying when he visited there last Friday.
We want to get to a point where everyone who walks into an office to collect a birth certificate, they walk in, they collect the birth certificate and go away. People come at 7 o'clock in the morning and they do not leave until 5 o'clock. In most days, even leave without the documents they are looking for. It is unfortunate that for a country of our size and our level of development, we can subject our citizens to that kind of behavior.
By Monday, we expect to have a fully operational new system. Maybe by January next year, you should be able to go online into the system, be able to query your birth certificate and even print it. So you won't necessarily
Of course, that
need to
is
come
the ICTCS. It's Moshero who's saying we will ensure that these systems are all streamlined. Now, the particular issue here is how government officers work. You go to seek a service in a government office, and what do you get? You get lackluster service. You go to a particular desk, you're told go to desk number 20, and desk number 20 tells you, no, what you need to have, actually, you should have gone to desk number 3 first and get some service, and then you shall come to me. So you're directed to desk number 3, and desk number 3 is unoccupied. There's nobody at desk number 3. You come back to number 20, and you say there's nobody at number 3. They tell you, I can't help you. You have to go and ensure that number 3 has somebody. So how do you ensure number 3 has somebody when you don't even know who's supposed to be there and what kind of service you're supposed to get? This is a kind of complaint that we see coming from government institutions over and over and over again, especially these issues: registration of birth certificate, death certificate, national identification, some basic services, passport services as well, immigration services, basic services that are just coming, present all the paperwork that you require, and then the process begins. But what happens? It takes forever. And if you look at it, it cuts across many offices, front-facing offices of government. This is public service. Remember, in 2002, when the NAC government came to power and they formulated new government, there was actually a new CS who was appointed. Her name was Ms. Joyce Nyamoya, and her title was PS for Public Sector Reforms and Development. What that meant was that she was supposed to come up with a new structure of how our public sector should work. She's the one who introduced the issues of performance contracting, that public servants should be able to work in certain ways. You have KPIs that are set for you. And we are here, how many years later? 2019 minus 2002, mathematics people,
17.
all those years later. And we still do not have a particular efficiency in public service. And I'm thinking, it's because of how our public service is structured. It's one of the things that we know. You work for public service, you know you will not get fired unless we have gone through a rigorous process. It is very hard to discipline a public servant. It's very hard to fire a public servant. One of the jobs that it has permanency of tenure is public service. And because of that, people feel, well, they're not answerable to many things. Even if you come in as a new PS, as a new CS, they tell you, we have seen others like you. Walikuja, walienda, walituacha hapa. The junior staff don't feel like they have to answer really to the senior staff. And this morning I'm saying, let's look at it differently. Instead of trying to say we reform the public service and we cannot really touch some aspects of the public service, why don't we outsource some of these services? So for instance, you go to a public office and you want to register your birth certificate. You find a company that has been contracted to basically run that. This is a public service. You find a company contracted to run that, and they have their KPIs that are clear. This company has been told somebody applies for birth certificate, they should get it within 2 days. How many birth certificates did you receive applications for? How many did you process within a certain time? And this improves our efficiency.
Interesting one. Again, bringing the private sector into what I would say is a government's job. You have to remember the private sector is profit driven, which is a serious motivational factor. So you'll find sort of the work ethics and then the public sector a little bit different from that of the private sector, in that the private sector, they have to answer to shareholders. The public sector have to answer to the electorate, but it's a little more convoluted than that, in that they don't get into the trouble that, say, somebody from the private sector would when answering to shareholders. It's very easy to get fired. There's targets set, KPIs are quite clear, performance indicators are quite clear. But in terms of outsourcing public services, we have to be very careful, because there is a duty by the government to provide these. When they outsource it, so long as the provision is there, we've got to be careful that, costs and things like that don't go up. If you're giving this to a profit-making company, their focus is profit. But for something like this, which is more administration sort of work, it's not something I'm as opposed to or as averse to as some other services that people consider should be outsourced. So, for instance, I don't think transport should be a private service, or we should have anything to do with the private sector. It should be fully, not even quasi public. It should be fully public. There's other services whereby human rights issues can come into it, and the government needs to be the ones who are responsible for that. We talked about water and sanitation and the provision of these services. Now, this is a human right, enshrined in our constitution. So when the government outsources that, who are we going to sue if we get water that is not of the quality that we need? Who are we going to go to with a human rights issue? Because companies don't have a duty to uphold your human rights. It's only the government who can violate your human rights. So there's certain issues that come into play once we're outsourcing to public companies. A very good example, for instance, was, I bring in the UK again, but the prison systems outsourced their transport to G4S. And what happened is some prisoners were injured, harmed, and I think one or two died during transportation from one prison to another. Now, that issue, the duty of the government to protect those, or the duty lies with the government. The onus is on the government to protect those prisoners. So once you start bringing in a private company, it then becomes convoluted in terms of trying to establish where the human rights abuse was, because this private company doesn't have a duty to uphold your human rights. It's a crime they've committed, but when you go back to government and say my human rights were violated, when the families of these prisoners were going back to government and saying my human rights were violated, government would say, well, actually that was G4S who killed your family member in transit. So we have to be careful when we're outsourcing government services, and in
the
terms
particular ones that I'm talking about are simple:
birth and death registration, marriage.
Yes, those ones that you need.
But this is not even rocket science. Matiangi did say, the way we're treating our citizens at this day and age, and it's despicable, and it really is.
And
this is the 21st century.
It's not so difficult, but we've managed to bungle it for the last 50 years, and then we see asking us to do something different only in the last. And here's another example of how it's going to take one individual who is a no-nonsense individual to actually get things done. And then you shudder to think about then the more complicated things at a government level that need to be done for the citizens of the country. If something as simple as issuing a document of your birth or death has been able to bring so much confusion and so much drama to the people of the country, how much more something a little bit more complicated?
They applied for a birth certificate for their son. The birth certificate came out, but the son had his name, the father's name.
So it had the wrong name. So what mistakes are made?
No, not mistakes.
We're not going to use that.
This is just simple. So, Eric Latif, and my son should be called Duncan somebody, and they
Latif,
come out. Yes.
Ideally.
They come out, and the son is called Eric Latif. Yes.
So it was I mean that's an error.
And this is after it took like 6 months of going from one desk to another to the other desk to this, and your file missing, your file
the
being
truth
retrieved.
of the matter is
it's a whole corrupt system.
Absolutely, that's it's creating little opportunities for petty corruption. So at each stage there's somebody you're bribing. So it's actually a money earner, making sure that the system is not working seamlessly and is not perfect.
What qualifies as being petty and what qualifies as being major corruption?
There's grand corruption and petty corruption. So grand corruption is public officials stealing money from their docket, misappropriating funds. Petty corruption is when members of the public are involved in bribery and so on. That's the difference.
There's nothing in between.
There's
Either up at the top or down
mid-level
at the bottom.
corruption.
No, I don't think petty signifies. I mean, it would suggest, the amounts of money are petty, but it's more to do with the public actually bribing public officials, members of the public, bribing officials that are mandated with delivering a service.
Let's take a look at the traffic, how the situation is on the road. But somebody actually said, you know what, yes, Matiang'i and the Inspector General of Police and everybody else has been to the civil registration services. They'll be gone. In 3 months' time, factory settings will be reset.
But we don't even
And this
need
is
to
what we'll
reinvent
get.
the wheel. This is the thing. Look at systems where it works and just borrow that.
It's not working here. We have tried to borrow. I'm telling you, Joyce Nyamoya came. It's 7:30.
Traffic.
So if you're on Thika Road this morning, aiming to get somewhere in the next hour, you might as well call in sick because that's not going to happen. It's a bumper to bumper, and we have now almost 10 lanes being used by an otherwise, 3-lane, 4-lane road. It's a bit crazy. Kiambu Road is also a parking lot, and these are roads that are also trying to feed onto Thika Road in and outbound of the city. So it is quite a mess. I told you the enjoyable time was before 6:30 if you were trying to get out. Allsops, Roy Sambo, Zimmerman, all of these trying to feed onto the road, giving us some major problems this morning. It's Monday morning traffic as we can expect. Mombasa Road at Green Park Estate is actually very smooth until you get to the Gateway Mall, where traffic has begun, and it goes all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Coming off of Jogo Road, it's bumper to bumper, heading to the City Stadium roundabout, and getting into the CBD. There's traffic. I don't have much more to share apart from that. If you find an alternate route, please be sure to let us know and we'll spread the word. 0719-012-600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
26 minutes to 8 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga, Jerry Thorne, and Nduo call this morning. So today, Monday, is when the government has promised that there are going to be changes at the registration of birth offices. This is in Nairobi, and they're saying, well, we're going to have better service delivery. When you come in there, you shall be attended to efficiently and in good time. And then there are those who are skeptics who said, well, yeah, it's going to happen, yes, for a month, yes, maybe, yes, but come next year, by February next year, we will go back to the same old system where you come in and you don't know where to start, where to end. Your process will take you more than 6 months to a year to just get a birth certificate for your child, or even a death certificate for your relative.
Why is it so difficult? I don't understand, because we're looking at something that is extremely menial.
It isn't difficult.
It is not difficult. It's something extremely menial. And you as the parents of the child, I mean, if we're looking at this specific document, or the family of the person who has passed away, you provide all the information. You provide the information of the parents, where they were born, etc., etc. It's put onto a piece of paper. Somebody signs it. It's stamped. The document is ready. Why? And you pay a nominal fee. I think it's 90 shillings. I don't know if it has gone beyond that now. Why then it is so difficult to translate between the information that I have provided and then the information that then should be put onto this piece of parchment, signed, stamped, and then handed over to the individual who asked for it in the first place? Where is the problem in terms of getting something so menial done? And it can sound like such a simplistic way of looking at it, but then it is very telling then of the other things that we are not able to do, which could be just a tad more complicated.
It tells you this is how the people who work in civil service think.
Why? You just are not going to do your job because I don't have to. I'm waiting for somebody to pay me 20,000 shillings
I don't really
for a
care.
90 shilling job.
I don't really care. I mean, utadu, that's it. It's utadu. Because
So what do we do? Do we raise their salaries?
what I am saying is no.
So that they
We
can be
get rid of
motivated
all
to
of them.
work?
At this particular Office of Birth and Registration of Persons, we subcontract a company to do this.
Truth be told,
With
I think
clear
the idea-
guidelines and saying, look, This is what your KPIs are. In fact, you shall get paid according to how you beat your KPIs. You shall tell us how many people applied, how many you processed, how many got their birth certificates within what time.
So then what would change between last Friday when CS Matiang'i visited? What would change between last Friday and then today when this miracle
people will be shaken. People will be shaken. People will fear that Matiang'i can come in. 23 people were arrested last week.
If we're going to make any changes or any reforms in the sector, we need to be a little bit more innovative. Do we really need a hard copy of a birth certificate in this digital age? We need to look beyond that. So if it's a number, you're going to be given a unique number whereby it goes into a database that is in the cloud somewhere. That's the sort of direction we should be looking. We shouldn't be looking to invest in a system that is soon to be obsolete. Let's look forward. Let's get away from these hard copy birth certificates. What do you need it for? Did you see what I mean?
Yes, I see what you mean.
Yeah, so if we're going to have any reforms, let it be about the fact that it's going to be innovative. We've got the ICTCS coming in and speaking to us. Why don't you come up with a system where everything is completely automated, whereby it's actually a number that you get, and through that number...
Those ideas will come from the private sector. And that's why I'm saying
bring
in
a
a private
sector. Innovative, the private
bring
sector.
Bring in the private sector, somebody who comes in with a solution and says, this is how we're going to...
Not Matiang'i, Musharu was from the private sector. So you don't have to bring in the private sector as entities. You can bring in individuals from the private sector, and hopefully they come with this sort of innovative approach.
The CS for ICT is the boss, right? People under him don't work.
Well, then he's not a
good
leader.
Still there?
No.
Then he's not a good leader.
You can't fire them.
Crack the way.
I'm telling you, the mentality is utakuja utaenda. Your founders here.
So what is the difference then between that and what CS Matiang'i was able to do in terms of putting the fear of God in people until they want to work on Monday? If Musharu cannot do that at his level, then how is it that Matiang'i was able to do that and at least instills some kind of
Matiang'i has been in the system
in
longer and understands it. Believe me, it's a nightmare. Someone coming from the private sector into public sector. It is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And secondly, these people will gang up against you because they know very well that you don't understand how this thing works.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And they benefit from the sort of disruptive systems that they have. As I said, these little sort of loopholes or sort of failures, they're opportunities for people to kula kitu kidogo.
If we know that exists, do you think the person at the helm doesn't know that they exist as well? And then he or she is totally handcuffed and cannot do anything, and is at some point even arm twisted and cannot do anything about the status
quo. It's not that he can't do anything.
Them to not be able to flow as a well-oiled machine in terms of now this ministry.
Why is it?
Why then? If they know, if we know, and we're on the outside,
it's not that he can't do anything. There's nothing of that sort. You can
absolutely.
Now the issue is, what are these things that he can do? Now, if the Minister for Interior comes in and says this is what they're going to do, again, that question has been answered partially. There is something that they are doing. Look, once upon a time, getting a passport in this country was an absolute nightmare. Compounded, compressed the works.
When is once upon a time? Are we talking about the Moi era? Or?
Even before Moi. It was not easy to get a passport. It just wasn't easy.
Something that's your right to.
You in fact, you didn't know it was your right. You thought it was a favor that was being done. Okay? Now, in the Kibaki era, it became something almost, it was like a dream come true. You could actually get a passport without knowing anyone, without bribing anyone. You simply got it.
This was under the leadership of
without even being a Kenyan.
Yes.
The minister, Mapambano minister. What was his name, unfortunately? The late? This was under his leadership. Kajwang. Otieno Kajwang.
No. It wasn't under his. He came a little later.
He came later?
He came later. After 2007 is when Kajwang came in. It was before that. Even now, if you go to get a passport, it isn't troublesome.
No.
If they give you a date, you will even get a notification on your phone. That system, someone got it right, it works. If you look like me and you have a white beard like me, they even tell you, no, you don't queue there. No. Go over there. Okay? So I'm saying there is hope for what we are hearing now because We already have something that was a complete mess once upon a time working, and it's been working for some time. Past a previous government into a new government, it is still working.
With the same people and the same individuals who are sitting in those positions and refuse to do any work. So it's possible with what we have to actually get the job done right. But we need a kick in the pants.
We had to bring in people from NYS. Remember, in all these things, when you hear something is not working, you hear what do you hear the government saying? We are going to bring in NYS personnel, right? NYS personnel come and they start. Same thing is happening here with the registration of persons. NYS personnel have been brought in to help streamline the system. Why is it we're talking about NYS personnel coming in when we have officers who work here?
Because they're disciplined and they will do exactly what they're told.
Yeah, there's an element of discipline with which they've been trained within
this
and
is
by.
not just an element.
Yeah,
These people are
it's
disciplined.
the way of life that they have.
If you go to government installation and institutions, even parastatals, the people who man your gates now are NYS. They are trained, remember, and they do a good job.
So then we don't need the private sector per se when it comes to public services.
Actually,
because
you might. You might. If there's something that has become problematic to the degree where it's become like a disease that has no cure, okay, then you perhaps need to change the whole regimen and bring in the private sector, as Eric's suggesting. Because
it's a support system.
For this particular department, what do they need to do? Make sure that people get birth certificates.
That's it.
That's it. Why do we outsource the printing of our fiduciary issue, the banknotes? Why doesn't the government print those notes?
And we have a government printer.
Yes.
Headache-inducing, isn't it? Headache-inducing conversation when you think about it.
My mind briefly just went in that direction of the government printer printing money, and I thought, whoa. Whoa!
If we didn't have,
you'd have issues.
Grand corruption. If we didn't have it before,
you'd have issues. Look, if you're talking about privatization, look at it this way. Look at what the Nairobi County government did, right? So they said we want to have efficiency in collection of parking fees. What did they do? They came up with a system, an electronic system. This was being manned by a private company. So, well, you can talk about the tender,
a good example,
the tender issue.
We're not talking about the private company.
Right? No.
The idea behind it was excellent.
Let's look at NTSA and application of a driving license today, right? If you want to renew your driving license, you go online, and when you go online, you apply. It's actually being facilitated by a private sector company. It's a company that has been contracted to manage this service.
So
okay,
you feel the same should
the same thing that should be done, and you're looking at it from
you don't think
make
costs
the process
would go
easy.
up because this company has to make
I'd
profits.
rather pay 40 shillings. What do you call it? Not facilitation. They call it convenience fee. I'd rather pay 40 shillings convenience fee.
It might be more than
extra.
40 shillings. There's people who can't afford
for
the
NTSA.
extra.
That's what it is.
Okay,
it's about that. And
no,
even
no.
for
If we imagine
for
these birth certificates, which are a given right, in that everybody, irrespective of sort of your fortune and whether you can afford it or not, needs to have a birth certificate, and it's actually a right. You should have your birth certificate. If we start outsourcing these, you realize, because these are profit-driven companies, the government money that should go into development, we start paying them extra because these guys have to make a profit. So we start paying them extra. And that will then be passed on to us, the consumers, or the birth certificate sort of finders.
Yes.
And so it can become expensive, which is not fair on the public. There's people who can't afford
but
that.
Consider that this is an issue because there's a backlog, isn't it?
Yes.
So if you're going to contract someone, you take this into consideration and say, this is what we're doing. We start paying you when you go beyond what we're already doing.
Yes.
That's how these things work.
So it's target driven, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But this is still a profit-making entity, and it will cost a lot more than it's costing the government.
I'm saying it doesn't have to.
Now, that's money. The money that the government is outsourcing or paying to outsource is money that should be going into development.
I'm saying
it's money that
don't
you
have
pay.
to. I'm saying they don't
so
have to.
So how are they going to pay this company that
birth
they've
certificates
outsourced?
are not free. Just so that we start.
Absolutely.
All right? They're 90 shillings.
That's
but
from the government,
the reason
who is
why
not
it's
looking to make money.
The reason why it's an issue is because a large number of people who expect and want birth certificates can't get them. Is that not so? At the time they want them. And we're saying we need these things done now. You are speaking as though when a company is contracted, they're there forever. You could contract someone for 6 months. You could contract them for 3 months.
There's still a cost.
Of course, there's a cost, and the cost would be pegged to the number of people who have not been able to get their.
But there's no return on that.
And the efficiency of it. Look, a cost of 10 shillings
Absolutely,
for
but there's
efficiency.
still a cost.
Yes, it's
which
a
will
cost
be
of 10
passed
shillings
on
for
to the
efficiency,
taxpayer.
which
Alright.
is better, which is
Shouldn't
much
that
better than
money
the corruption
actually be
cost.
going?
The cost of bribery, because that is the reality on the ground, is that you actually are spending money to bribe these officers. They're telling you, the person in county number 24 is not there, but I can get your forms and take them to them. At what? How much? At 200 bob. At 10 bob, it's okay. But then you get the service that you need. So you're basically saying that this birth certificate, even the government can
Who
say,
says
all right, let's
this-
reduce our 90 bob. So from this 90 bob that we are actually doing, we are giving this company 10 bob. We are taking 80 shillings for a service.
Who says birth certificates limited would charge 10 shillings? They're out to make profits.
That's
And they're going to have to invest in
Okay.
systems that the
Okay.
government doesn't
Let's
have.
talk specifics. How many children are born in this country every day? How many are born every year? How many are born every month?
Going by the last census we had seen, it was about 1 million children per year.
Yeah, precisely. So if you gave these people a contract for a year,
They'll be making 1 million times whatever.
whatever, plus there are those that the backlog that had not actually been met. So how would the government lose money?
Because they need to pay. If somebody's doing something for you, CT, usually you come to an agreement that you're going to compensate them.
Yes,
or you're going to pay them. And businesses are in business for that very reason, that they're making money. So if we're outsourcing this government service, what's happening is government is paying this company, which needs the money to produce, so the cost to produce the birth certificate, which is what the government would have charged. And then, of course, they've got their overheads and so on. But most importantly, it's profit driven.
If you're not,
So
if you're,
the charges are going to be passed on to these people who are looking for birth certificates.
if you're not paying this company,
this
you
is-
will hire people.
This is the pitfall
You will
of
hire
bringing in the
people.
private
Who you will
sector.
pay?
Who you will pay. And you're not just paying a salary, you're paying plus all the other benefits. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 12 minutes to 8 o'clock. The phone lines are now open. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Let's look at the costs to the taxpayer when you have these offices devolved all the way to, let's say, district level. And you have birth registration and death registration services coming all the way to the district level. What does it require? It requires that you set up an office. It requires that you employ staff. And when you get employed into government, there is the whole cost that goes with it. So you are paying this staff. You are giving them, all the benefits that come with the position. That's a cost. Outsource that, you'll actually pay a fraction of that cost.
I don't think
And
so.
you have
Not
efficiency.
not when this company is trying to make profits. Remember, it's a profit-making company. Of course, the other issue that arises is data protection. In terms of, do you want private companies having your data as an individual? What can they do with it? Are you protected from abuse of your information? Can they sell it on to third parties? Data is going to be a big thing, much bigger than we realize. So if the government has your data, that's one thing. They have your birth certificate, parents' name, date of birth, and so on. But once we start outsourcing these things, then of course the issue of data protection comes into play. We have a call?
I have a call on the line. This is Paul calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Eric, and good morning, panelists.
Good morning.
Now, I wanted to make a quick contribution to the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas I don't have a solution, but I think I like the discussion that is going on. I think contracting these services makes a great deal of a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unlike what Jerry is saying, when you contract, you pay. Certainly, these companies are in business, and therefore they have to make money. But
Sure.
remember, the government is already paying anyway. So then we go back to what Eric is saying. Maybe you need to fire these guys. Now, what you need to do is probably be very tactical about it, because then, as a government, you could end up with a lot of labor issues.
Yep.
But then, I don't know, there was a time when there was something called performance contracting in government. I don't know what happened to it.
It's still there
where-
on the down low.
yeah, just like City is saying, you agree with these guys, the current employees in charge of this service, what they need to deliver on. If they don't deliver, then you have a basis of getting them out of the job. Then you contract it to a private company. Now, the beauty of contracting it to a private company, then you get into even more stringent controls in terms of delivery and performance. So I don't actually believe that contracting these services out is not going to resolve the solution. Actually, it could be the solution. Now, we go to what Eric was saying again about, I think it must have been Jerry was talking about innovation, clouds and everything. The problem with our country is that, and especially in the public service, is that solutions and innovation is not what is inherent. There is this idea about making money out of government. So there is more money in having these surveys or these operations as manual as possible. That is where there is the money, because then I have to pay a facilitation fee to get what I want. Have you ever wondered why our roads get potholes and we wait for the potholes to become craters before we can fix them? When it is much easier to fix a pothole.
Tell us why.
It's because there is more money in constructing a road than repairing a road. So that is why probably if you're depending on the same guys to come in with innovation and all, it might not work. It could work if you get John Mishuki somewhere, but unfortunately we only had one.
Yep.
So the thing is, go back to what City has always been advocating for. Get people to contract. Let them say what they're going to do. If they don't do it, they have lied. You jail them.
So where do we draw the line in terms of outsourcing, given that a lot of government services are lacking or are wanting in terms of efficiency? Where do we draw the line? Because this then becomes sort of a companies or different companies that are running the country. We vote for a government, pay them our taxes, and then they pay other people to do the jobs. So where do we draw the line? Should we outsource our military if we're not doing well in Somalia?
No, not quite. I think what will happen, and it goes back to another conversation you had in the Situation Room, deterrence. When people realize that their jobs can actually be outsourced, people will shape up. That is what happens. If I work in the private sector. If I am lazy about doing my job and I realize my counterpart on the other desk was lazy and got fired, I will shape up.
The same thing could happen to you.
So it's sort of a way of motivating. What about this issue of data protection? So you have private companies with all your information as an individual, and they don't have a duty to you, perhaps, that the government would to protect your data. And we don't know which direction data is going. Big data. Apparently, it's the next big thing sort of in this century. So what about that issue? How do we deal with that?
I think when you're talking about the contracting, you get into sort of NDAs that make this data. I mean, the same way government would have handled this. For
with
example,
government workers.
Google, yes, if Google could be contracted, and then they are made to sign the disclosures, and I hope our ICT is able to review and verify that data protection, programs or what you want to call it, data protection kind of services that are attached to this contracting are available. I wouldn't see why we would lose out on that.
But you realize private companies don't have a duty to citizens to uphold any rights, whether it's from data protection or so on. And given their profit making, if it becomes sort of business sense to sell this data.
The government has the duty, and that's why it's contracting this person with clear guidelines on how you're going to operate.
Of which I've given you an example where those guidelines, they can be a mistake, they can be an accident. Who do we then turn to? Do we go looking? Who do we hold accountable for these services? These private companies or the government?
We hold the government. We hold the government accountable.
But the government can pass the buck and say, actually, it was Birth Certificates Limited
that
messed that up.
It's not. It doesn't matter.
You don't do that.
Paul, thank you very much. I want to bring in Lydia, who's also calling. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your educational programs. I wanted to say I have a lot of experience in applying for birth certificates for friends, relatives in Mombasa and all. I don't want to call myself a broker. I am very curious to know how the government operates, because I lobby through email to the various, to Treasury, Commerce and Industry, Law Reform, etc. Now, when a relative tells me, please apply for my birth certificate, I need, they want an original birth certificate for whatever they want. I go there, and the line is very long, but they don't have any numbers or whatever. Then I just jump the queue and I ask, is this the right place where I should stand? And they say yes and whatever. Then they say, go and pay 50 bob. You pay 50 bob. Come after 3 days. I go there. As soon as they say, okay, we found it, I always tell everybody, please study what they have shown you. They give you a draft. Now, go and pay 50 bob. When you look at it carefully, they will write your name, then they will put a spelling error to your father's name, or they will say, if you are a female, they'll say you are a male. So you have to check everything.
But why
Now,
do you
if
jump the
didn't-
queue?
I just jump the queue to ask, is this the right place? Because they don't have
Because there's
any
nobody
name
telling you where you're supposed to be.
Right, okay.
where, but they only use the first two stands at Bishop's Plaza for you to. So I say, they say either of them. See now, so when the shorter line is what I choose. They don't. You have to keep on poking your nose. And I tell somebody, just excuse me, I only want to ask a question. I jump the line and I ask.
So the
And
level of
then I
service
choose
is
my-
wanting
yes.
in terms of even
Yes.
information.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
is
the
not
whole
available.
thing, the whole thing is the mindset.
But
of the-
why? This is not rocket science. This is what I don't understand. Unless it's deliberate, because there's people who are profiteering
Yeah,
from,
it is. It's
from
deliberate,
sort of the
and
cracks
there's
within
nothing-
it,
nothing
and they
will be
don't want
done
to
to you.
automate it. Well, if that's the case and somebody's benefiting from it, then I don't see why and how they're going to change it.
Nothing will be done to you, and that's the mindset that they have. I mean, you come in, so you complain. How far are you
impunity.
gonna go? Yeah, it's
Look
the
at it-
impunity.
Looking
Trickle
at what
down
happened
impunity.
on Friday, the
Complete.
individuals who were arrested, on what grounds were they arrested? What were they arrested for?
Who is
The
this?
there were some people who
23
were
individuals
23
were
individuals were
arrested.
arrested
From?
at,
From that
at the
department.
registry, right? And what were they? I would like to know what they were arrested for.
Well, we hear what exactly the charges they'll be brought up against them when they go to court, maybe today or this week. But then you still don't know. So is it what you didn't do your job
Along the lines of abuse of office? Because
did you demand a bribe? What exactly is it? 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. We're talking about the inefficiencies in provision of government services and what should be done about this. So yes, I'm saying that let's subcontract some companies to offer these services, but also let's look at what are the downsides to this. When Jerry has brought up the issue of data protection, but also remember Edward Snowden of the United States was actually a contractor for the U.S. government in the security sector. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it up.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, Valley Road down through to Kenyatta Avenue is moving very slowly, and that's traffic coming out of either extended from Langata Road or also from Gong Road, and heading into the CBD using that route is proving to be quite perilous this morning. There's been a minor accident at the Kabisarian Avenue and James Gishuru, worsening traffic coming out of Wayaki Way. You're asking what is really happening on Wayaki Way. You must understand that there's construction on the 87, major construction going on Wayaki Way, headed out towards Kikuyu, and that is in both directions, and that is what brings the constant jam every morning, and now compounded by this accident that we see. Most schools are closed, but why are we still experiencing traffic? I guess that's just it. We're still at the time of the month where more cars are on the road, and so we have a bumper to bumper situation on Mombasa Road, the same thing happening on Langata Road, as well as some parts of Ngong Road. So it's traffic wherever you go. Thika Road is still a no-go zone, so if you're planning on going there, wait it out a bit. It'll get better as we get along. Round about 8 o'clock now. If you see anything changing, we'll let you know. But you can also let us know on 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
www.spicefm.co.ke is our website. SpiceFMKE is our Facebook page, and we're live streaming. And our Twitter handle is SpiceFMKE. Please follow us. And the conversation on Twitter is with the hashtag The Situation Room. This morning, we're talking about efficiency of government services. Of course, we're talking about what is the CSS. Two CSS, Fred Matiang'i and Mr. Mushero, have said is going to be difference at the registration offices, where from this week things are going to be more efficient. But then I'm saying, well, yes, we will reset to factory settings after 3 weeks or so.
And if we can see that, don't you think they know that as well? Don't you think that those sentiments by them have been taken into consideration, whereby they say, look, things must change, and we actually see a change coming in on Monday, and we sitting out here say, oh yeah, well, that would be great, but after a while things are going to change. Perhaps it would be different this time. If we saw what happened with the obtaining of a passport, for example, and how it was a teeth pulling exercise at best, and we see that getting better over time, don't we see this as indications that this also could change when it comes to getting a birth or death certificate?
The term conditioning comes to mind. People can be conditioned to be skeptical. People can be conditioned to be positive.
I thought you were going to say lazy, i.e. the public servants.
The public servants are not lazy. No. They are deliberately willful because there is a profit element to that particular mindset that they have. It's not that they're lazy. It's not that they're not knowledgeable. They know exactly what they're supposed to do. They even train to do it. And given the incentive, they will do it. Now, there's something that...
Before you come in, City, can I take in these 2 calls?
Take 3.
I've got 2 people on the line. This is Dr. Mike and Nancy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Oh,
Yes, no, you're both of you on air, so just say hi, Mike. It's okay.
Morning.
Shall we start with the lady? Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning.
Yeah, what's your view on this?
I don't think that they need to outsource it. I've worked a little bit in the public sector, and people know what to do. Actually, they are the sharpest minds.
Yep.
And they are not all corrupt. But the reason why you see corruption happening is when people create their own kingdoms within the system. Normally, when you implement an IT solution, it re-engineers the whole process.
Yeah.
It rethinks it, changes it through, and removes some of those kingdoms. So somebody may be there, has been established and has been corrupting the system for his own profit. But if you implement that system and it brings about transparency, and one thing I find is that most corrupt people do not want transparency.
No, all corrupt people.
So what they will do is fight the implementation of the system. So that will happen at the very, very top, where you see the bosses now are fighting the whole process. But when, if the CS is determined, they will implement it. And when that happens now, everything is transparent. Everybody can see where the bottleneck is. So if things are not being processed, it will be clear where they are and who they've gone to. So it automatically kills everything. And now, even if you don't fire the public service staff, there's no need to fire them.
But if they know that they can be, reshuffled or removed, yes, and exposed, they don't want that. Everybody wants to look good, so they will work. But of course, heads will roll, people will be shuffled, people will be removed, and the system will work.
Can I ask you, Nancy?
It's not that they... Yes.
If you said you've worked in the public, so I would really try to get a sense of what we see when members of the public actually go in and try to get a service actually performed for them. What you see is people sitting around, or maybe an empty desk where somebody's taken a walk and has not come back. Things that need to be done, because we're not talking about something that's overly complicated. A very simple process that really should take people a couple of hours to get done. You should actually, like something like a birth certificate, you are the one who comes with the bulk of the information. Something that should be seamless in terms of its processing should actually maybe take you 2 hours to get done, from the time where you input the information to the time where the registrar signs it and then stamps it and you're gone.
Yes.
Where is the problem? Because
the
speaking to somebody who has sat there and understands.
Yes.
The kingdoms?
The person. Yes, exactly. The person who's overseeing such a section is not doing their job.
And tells people don't.
Even if they want to do their job, perhaps they feel intimidated, but they don't have the spine to do it right. So they don't have the authority to talk to those people. And many times it's imagined. So, for example, let's say that the people who are doing the work or sitting around have been brought in by politicians, and then they feel that they cannot talk to them because so and so, they understand the power.
It's somebody's guy.
Yes, so they feel afraid or intimidated to talk to that person, while in reality, the Mkubwa will not stop, will not do anything.
Right.
So sometimes it's perceived, and yet it is not real. So if you have a system, that section head will be able now to give reports and expose what is going on, and will feel as if the responsibility has been removed from them. So if the senior boss can do something about it, it's up to them to do something. You understand what I mean? Yeah. So but what happens is at the top, if the top person is putting pressure, is reading the reports, is seeing what's going on, and is making decisions, everybody right down to the bottom will work.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Asante sana. Mike, call back, please. Mike was also holding on the line. He wanted to contribute and join in. So, Mike, you can also call in again, 0719 012 600. 0719 012 600.
What's clear is there's no doubt that there's a difference in attitudes between sort of the workforce in the public sector and the workforce in the private sector. So maybe we need to get to the bottom of it and actually start to motivate the workforce in the public sector, whether that's increasing salaries or putting systems in, as opposed to outsourcing. Because the question is, where do you stop? What do you not outsource? Because if any ministry, any government department isn't as efficient as it could be, then a private company could actually come in. So do we just let a consultancy firm run the country altogether, bring in management consultants to govern us as Kenyans? Where do we stop?
Every government office you go to, even private offices, there is a little box they have for what is called opinions.
Suggestion box.
Suggestion box.
Yes. CT opinions.
I need something to do with opinions. If people the public sector understood that a complaint against them would have
be taken
consequences,
they would handle their clients who are the public a little better. Just that little knowledge that if a complaint goes forth, there's somebody who's going to come back and just that knowledge.
Yeah.
But the knowledge we currently have is even if you complain,
nothing's going to happen.
What about
Mohammed is on the line from Mombasa. Good morning, Mohammed.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Salama kabisa.
I must say, Asante sana. This is very interesting, and I think it's a first step towards giving us such information as a public, and also a platform for us to maybe share our experiences.
Yeah,
I'm a victim of this so-called kingdoms that I've created. Can I just share my experience, please?
Yes.
Okay. Back in 2002, I lost my ID. And I went and I reapplied for a duplicate ID. Only for me to get my ID in 2012.
10
10
years.
Did you say 2002?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Uh-huh.
When President Kibaki was naming his government, I was standing at the DO's office applying for my ID. And in 2012 is when I got my ID.
When the president was leaving office.
Yes.
After 2 terms.
Yes.
Right?
So it boils down to you as an individual. I refused to be taken around. I refused to pay monies. What I made it important for me was to understand who I was dealing with. Every time I was there, I asked the individual's names. And when I went last to the NSSF building, the clerk that I found outside had been promoted like to different levels. And he was the last guy I saw who told me, I need your grandfather's birth certificate, your grandmother's birth certificate, your father's birth certificate. I'm like, dude, my grandfather died before Kenya came into existence. 1941.
Wow.
I mean, seriously. Yeah. So let's be practical. I had the old generation ID. I returned it. I got the new generation ID. I lost the new one. So I said, please give me a replacement because I lost my ID. It can't take us 10 years just to issue an ID.
How should we cure this system, Mohammed?
I think, first of all, it's the individual as me to say no first.
Refuse
Number
to give
two,
a bribe.
Refuse to give a bribe. Know who you're dealing with. Know the individual's name, the department he's in, why is he there? How long does it take you to get the service? And I think maybe if we had a public platform where we would air out experiences for purposes of maybe, let's hope somebody like C.S. Matiangi would have
Access to this platform.
Yes, to this platform. And let's give this information out.
Right.
I believe we will filter out these clowns and we'll have a very efficient system.
Thank you very much, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Mike, good morning.
Oh, hello everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
You guys set me up with my boss.
Really?
How?
He's saying Nancy's.
Nancy's your boss?
That's not a problem. That's not a problem. No, mine is a 2-minute experience
Yes.
that I have. I mean, on the bottom line, it's the worst time to have a baby in Kenya, as long as you want that baby registered at the bureau. Last year in September the 2nd, my son was born.
Congratulations.
Up to now, thank you. Up to now, the boy doesn't have a birth certificate.
1 year, 2 months later.
1 year, 2 months later. What used to happen, what actually normally happens, once the baby is born, the notification is sent by the hospital
Absolutely.
to the registration bureau, where now the birth certificate is processed. Yours is to present there with some money, I think the 90 bob, from where now you can pick the document. I went there just recently, last week. Then I was again told another story of going to e-citizen and registering. I mean, I even got confused. I left it at that point. Okay, on the other side, I needed a passport to travel. This time when we were queuing at 3 a.m. I went, and since I knew I needed this passport in a record 1 week for me to manage to go wherever I was going, I got a contact in there, in that brown building. I won't say its name.
We know it. It's now.
And-
That's why you apply for passports. Come on, Mike. It's public
And
knowledge.
in a record 2 days,
Yeah.
I had my passport. Okay, I'm confessing my sins. I had my passport.
Because you knew a guy.
Him with. No, I even did not know him. I've even never met him.
You got a guy.
In fact, what I did, we agreed I'll give him 5,000 once the passport is out. So the guy really diligently did his job and processed the thing, and I went and I found that it is out. The beauty of it is that he's not the one who actually will issue it to me. I mean, the guy who will give it to me finally is not the guy who I promised. I even did not know. Somehow they are faceless. They'll never want to meet you. They'll always want to talk through proxies and M-Pesa. So I went and took my passport. I was lucky I did not pay the 5K. But the point is...
Oh, you didn't pay, so you scammed the guy.
I did. At the end of the day...
Double corruption.
I managed to get my passport without paying the agreed bribe I was paid.
It was an illegal contract anyway, so you can't enforce it.
Either way. But the point is, given the experience I've had, both working in government and being a consumer of service from government, we have a long, long, long way to go. It does not matter who we bring, even if we bring Bill Gates here to manage our system. Our problem largely lies with the culture that our forefathers left. That until you are given something, your hands are oiled. And in everything that you do, in every file that you take, it's what is in it for me.
Yeah.
What is in it for me?
Dr.
Even in the medical space.
If you accept that this is entrenched in our culture, should we then not maybe rework the system and reimagine it and recreate it so that we embrace this and it's part of how the system works, perhaps?
In my view, the fear of re-engineering the whole system and the effect it will, the compounding effect it will have on everyone is what, because we need to plow this whole thing inside out. And what Matiang'i is speaking about is a very tiny tip of the iceberg. It's in fact so rotten to the core that you dread to the thought that you will be on the other side of the counter, even as a government official, because you know for sure what is happening on the other side. It is so faceless, it is so systemless, and that is why they'll always fight tooth.
So do you think?
Tooth and nail.
Do you think we should outsource these services to private entities?
Whether it's outsource it or not, let us grind the whole system to a halt for 1 month. Let us weed out. The way you weed your land, make sure all weeds are off the place. That's the way it should happen. Then slowly the culture will just be put in place. Systems bringing in a rotten culture, in my view, won't really be a solution. We need much more than a system in this country.
Thank you,
Not
Mike.
just even at the national, even down to the, apart from the village level where the chief is known by virtually everyone. I think everything else is just rotten.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Bleak outlook out there.
Let's go to Nyandarua. John, good morning.
Yeah, morning. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is John. I'm from Nyandarua, and I'm very happy to have a day to get you guys.
Asante sana. Karibu.
Well, I wanted to asante sana. I wanted to contribute to this thing regarding corruption in Kenya. This is not something that Matiang'i will do away with. Yeah, we need very, very radical changes in the whole system. The political system, everything. So, amendments that would address corruption.
Sorry, I missed that. What would address corruption?
The system from the president.
I mean, we need a constitutional amendment.
Okay.
That would address corruption.
How so?
What amendment? What provision?
We want to have, a provision that would give punishment to anyone who commits corruption.
We already have enough laws for that. They don't seem to work. It's not a Katiba issue, the corruption and the...
We've dropped him. We've lost John.
Interesting, because that was actually in the Punguza Mizigo proposal by Dr. Okoth, whereby he talked about putting in more laws for corruption. Adding more instruments to fight corruption from a legal perspective, it's not going to work. They're already there. We have enough laws, criminalizing the act, and it's, the consequences are very punitive and so on, custodial sentences. But this doesn't stop people from being corrupt. I think we need to rethink our system. If we accept, and everybody says it's part and parcel of our culture. I've always given the example that there's countries whereby you can pay to fast track certain services. That is corruption repackaged, so there's transparency with it. But the fact that I'm getting a faster service than others by paying. So what they've done is structured corruption. We call it corruption, would have to reframe it. But let's structure this toa kitu kidogo culture into our workings, into our system. Let's rethink it completely out of the box, something completely new.
But why is it even corruption, honestly? Because at what point is it corruption? Is it if I give you money to induce you to do something for me? If I promise to give it to you after you've done the service?
It's just
if there's no promise at all
is-
and I feel I want to thank you by giving you money, at what point is it corruption?
Really? It's the same thing,
It's at the point where you're saying, I will not do it unless. That is corruption. Yes, come on. I mean, you're employed to offer a certain service, and then you're here saying, looking at somebody
what you don't want
in a
is
manner
to
likely
put a
to
barrier
suggest.
for
You
people
know, they
who
never
can't
actually
afford
say
it.
they're not going to do it.
Yeah, they just look at you in a manner likely to suggest.
No,
They just make it very difficult. They tell you go and bring your great grandfather's birth certificate.
Actually, they don't make the policemen make it difficult by inconveniencing you. But conversely, they also assure you that they could make it easier
for you should you do one, two, or
But
the
is
other.
it fair on the less fortunate, those who can't?
No,
who
is it
don't
fair on
have?
anybody?
It's not
It's
fair
not
This
fair on
isn't
anybody.
even a less fortunate
No,
issue.
those who can buy convenience, that's one thing. But if you can't, then it becomes an unfair system. An
You're
unfair
first on the
society.
line, you're queuing in a bank, and then somebody else comes in because they have more money, they jump the queue.
That does happen.
Usually, they allow you to open an account.
Where you
Premier,
pay extra
yeah,
and
where
then you
you-
go.
Now there
which
you
case
go,
for-
an
for
example
more money
where
than
they've
you-
structured
yes.
it. They have structured
Yes.
it. It's
If
the
you-
equivalent of having a VIP section. You pay a little bit more, or you sit and you feel more important. So
You can even drink tea.
And this particular service.
the Premier Banking, you do pay more. Say,
Yeah.
for instance, with Barclays, they've got a Premier Banking. You get your own room. You can drink tea, as you say, and it's personalized banking.
Yeah,
so
they send
that's
you
an
a hello every
example.
now and then.
You see,
but
that's
hey,
okay.
That's an example
That's
of having
okay.
structured.
So are we
what
bribing
we'd
the
call
bank
corruption.
to give us
Absolutely,
better
to give us
service?
better services.
You are paying more for that.
Now
you are
that's what
paying
I'm
more for this
suggesting.
service, right? But then everybody else who's not paying more for that is queuing on a line. But can you imagine if somebody just came in and today, because I have an extra 10 bob, I want to jump the queue? I will
This
be
is
wrong.
why we need to restructure it so that it works like banks. There's a Premier service. You pay a little bit more, and then the government can make more money. There's transparency. It sounds absurd, but we really need to look into this corruption factor. If it's part and parcel of who we are inherently and innately corrupt, then maybe we need to rework our system so it can work for us.
It's 24 minutes after 8. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
We
FM.
always have Kenya's biggest conversation. Please tell your friends to tune in. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. You can tune in on Spice FM KE Facebook, www.spicefm.co.ke. That's our website. And also, if you're in Malindi, we are on 97.7. In Nyeri, we are on 90.9. Eldoret, 96.7. 96.0 in Nakuru, 102.5 in Kisumu, 87.9 in Mombasa, 94.4 in Nairobi. In the Situation Room, my name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga, we have Jerry Thorne and Nduoko.
All right, looking at other issues this morning and trying to get our minds wrapped around the fact that, I'm just going to come out and say it, we are clamoring for mediocrity and we have been labeled as emerging economies for way too long, and really asking ourselves really what it is when it is deemed an emerging economy, and what we should be doing and how we should be then reaching for excellence. And I dare say, even from conversations that we've had a few minutes ago and conversations that we've had weeks and months ago, in terms of excellence, we are not actually pursuing what it is that we should be, even if it is by the standards by which we have set as these so-called emerging economies. You're only emerging for so long. At some point, you got to break the surface and come out on top, or at least sink, so that we know where exactly it is that we are going. What we've been or not been able to do in the last 20 years, looking at Kenya as an example, or even countries around sub-Saharan Africa, or even other countries whereby it's said to be that we've not quite hit the first world world mark. And asking and saying, not even asking, but demanding and saying we should actually have done much better. And I'm looking at what the Prime Minister for New Zealand was able to talk about, what their country has been able to do in 2 minutes, what she was able to say that they have been able to do in 2 years. Now, I'm not talking about taking over from other projects that have started. I'm talking about what they were able to create, innovate, develop in 2 years when she took over power.
So this week is the 2-year anniversary of the creation of this government, and the team has decided to set me a challenge to see whether or not I can run through the last 2 years in 2 minutes. So here's some key headline achievements, not everything, but I'm going to see whether or not I can at least get some of it in. So, start the clock. We've created 92,000 jobs. We've built more than 2,200 state houses. We've banned offshore speculators. We've planted 140 million trees. We've got better cancer care through radiation machines, Pharmac funding, and created a central cancer agency. We've delivered cheaper doctors' visits for over 500,000 people. We're taking mental health seriously with mental health advisors and GPs and doctors' clinics across the country. We've increased minimum wage to $17.70. We've hired 2,000 more doctors and nurses. We're building more classrooms in schools for 100,000 students. We've brought unemployment to the lowest rate in 11 years. We've got the highest increase in wages in a decade. We've helped 1 million Kiwis pay their bills with their winter energy payment.
She spoke for 2 minutes. It's just a minute.
This is just a minute. We'll hear a little bit more of what they were able to do later. And now we are saying clearly in 2 years that where she has sat at the helm, what her government has been able to do. We're not talking about bide over initiatives from a previous government where another prime minister sat at the helm, but what they have been able to do. And we even have you maybe hear what she said later about policies that they've been able to actually think of and then implement, put in place over things that happen. And this is specifically to the terrorist attack that took place in New Zealand about a year ago. And out of that, they were able to implement a policy where they saw, arm reduction across the country, whether it was privately or public owned. So we're saying that focusing and actually making a concerted effort to do something and get it done right can actually yield results. So we talk about ourselves as emerging, constantly emerging. When are we going to break the surface? When are we going to get out? We're just trying to get up there. We need to break the surface.
There's two things I'm going to bring to this conversation. The first one, of course, is that New Zealand is a highly developed free market economy. So the comparisons with us, we've got to take a lot of things into account, and we can discuss that. But also I think it's very important we note that this is a female prime minister. And so she's able maybe to bring about change, because when she talked about the issues, they touched on every pillar.
Start that again. Start that again.
Maybe it's the men that are failing us.
She's a female prime minister, so because she's female.
No, I'm just saying we shouldn't overlook her gender in all these achievements.
Who's overlooking the gender?
No. I think it's important that I point it out. It's important that I point it out.
When you have
maybe
a woman
when we have a female president,
she
can speak the same.
So she's able to speak fast or what? Or she's able to
No, what was
articulate.
interesting when I listened to her list of sort of accolades or sort of
achievements, and these were just the key achievements, right?
Absolutely. They touched on so many different areas in that she talks from, at one point it's about creating jobs, and then it goes to classrooms. She talks about mental health. She talks about cancer. So you can see it's a wide scope of things. I think things, as a woman, she sees society differently. And I don't want to bring the gender issue just for the sake of the gender issue, but something like mental health. I think you would find a woman would have a softer approach, or would be more astute, or their receptors to such issues would be better than a man. I like the scope of her list of achievements, in that it's not just, she's not talking about economic development. We have taken ourselves from GDP of this and so on, which I think would be the more male perspective. With a woman here, she's focused, she's talked about unemployment, minimum wage, classrooms, mental health, doctors, cancer, 92,000 jobs, housing. To have that scope,
gun reform.
I think it comes from being a woman, and we saw her reaction even after the tragedy that was the terrorist attack, and how she embraced the Muslim community and how she went about it. And I think that was a female touch.
So what made her achieve?
Well, I mean, if we're going to compare it with Kenya, we have to remember, as I said, this is a serious economy in New Zealand. We don't have the financial muscle.
There are 4 million people, just so that you understand. Let's start there. There are 4.7 million people.
4.7
million.
Nairobi.
Precisely.
That's the population of Nairobi.
Yes. So carry on with what you're saying.
So are we saying that if then given a larger population that she would fail? And I think that
the dynamics would be completely different.
However, I
But would she
think
be
that,
able to achieve
I
at
think
least
that
5?
it was clear. One thing that she said before she even started, my team. It was clear that we are
My
working.
team told me.
My team. What my team and I have been able to achieve, and they said that I should actually try and come up with this, work on this challenge so we can say what we have been able to achieve since 2 years having been in government. So it's clear that there's a working together. It's clear that there's focus. It's clear that there is a will to implement some of the agendas that are obviously quite beautiful on paper and take those policies from paper to reality and say, look, we want to succeed and actually have this done.
So she
so
has
it
said
applies whether you're dealing with one person, whether you're dealing with 4 million or whether you're dealing with 50 million. The same kind of focus can apply. And that's where it must start from.
Don't forget, she's a politician.
But it's these things that she said that they've been done.
Yeah, politicians speak.
But in this
politicians
case,
are able to actually
but in
claim.
This case, in this case, what she says they have done, they have done.
How do you
And
know
if
this?
you take the information if you take it and you want to put it against, can we look at, say, this country, have these things actually been done? She's talked about numbers if you ask her to set them against any kind of fact, would she then come back and say, actually, it's not 92,000 jobs we've created, it's actually 87,000? I mean, really? The focus is clear that they've been able to get these things done over time. And we'll hear some of the other things that she's over 2 years. And it will be clear that in some of the other things that she says that they've been able to achieve, that they can achieve.
I have no reason to doubt that they have been done. But if I were to ask you to give me evidence of these things, would you?
Well, I could look, but I can't give you right now at 8:33.
Then we should say that she has reported.
She claims to have achieved all these things.
That's what we will say.
I think also the mindset with which you operate here in Kenya says, okay, have we seen? Yeah, that also helps you kind of want to apply that to other things.
It is absolutely
also against what promises.
Yes.
X number of jobs. How many had you
Kenyan
promised?
mindset that you now want to apply and say, even if another politician from another country comes and says they've done one or two other things, you're going to want to think, have they actually really done
where's
them?
the evidence?
There's a lot of leaders and politicians with very noble intentions for Kenya. You have to remember, we don't have the financial muscle that we compare, with these countries that we compare ourselves to. New Zealand, of course, it has a sizable manufacturing sector. It's a good service industry complemented by how efficient in their agriculture industry is as well. So unless we get these things right and we have the money to actually cover these costs, we're not going to get there. I don't think this is a matter of just good leadership. She's backed by a very good foundation. This is a developed country and we can't compare ourselves to them.
I think
we
she's
have
good
our
in
financial limitations.
She's good in communicating. If you also listen to what our brothers have done, if remember in 2017 when they were coming out to say what they had done in the first 5 years.
List them. This is a list of her achievements, yeah.
Yes, we have done ABCD, so there's electricity distribution, and you keep telling her that, Jerry, we have electricity, we have
rural electrification, SGR, mega infrastructure development, absolutely.
So we're up to scratch. So we're up to
in fact, when we come back, Jerry Thorne is going to take 2 minutes to tell us what the Jubilee government has achieved in the last 7 years. Just list them. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 25 minutes to 9 o'clock. Good morning. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Spice up your life.
The only road in Nairobi that seems to be flowing smoothly is Kangundo Road, heading towards Komarok out, and also Dandora, Kariobangi outer ring traffic. That is where it's flowing well. Langata Road traffic is for tears, apparently. People are crying, sitting in traffic, wondering when they're going to get where they're going. James Gishuru is crazy. It is absolutely a parking lot. spent 1.5 hours on Mombasa Road trying to get to the CBD. Somebody is actually crying and saying, I don't know how we are going to get out of this today. Kiambu Road feeding onto the Thika Superhighway also is a crying situation. So we have people crying in traffic on this Monday morning. It's a little bit beyond Monday blues, and the traffic is causing all of this. So if you didn't leave early, unfortunately, you're going to have to stick it through. You'll get out eventually, as they say. Be careful, be patient. You'll get there eventually. Around about 8:36, that's the traffic situation in Nairobi. Let us know what's happening in different parts of the country as well, and we can share the word. 0719-012-600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
24 minutes to 8 o'clock, 24 minutes to 9 o'clock, rather. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, we are right here discussing what the New Zealand Prime Minister has said just the other day. You know, she looked back, it's the anniversary of 2 years of her government, and she took 2 minutes to list the number of achievements that her and her team have achieved in 2 minutes. And those were many things that they've done in 2 years.
Nduo is right in that I have brought in the Kenyan mindset into the discussion. It is how we understand politicians to be, and the politicians that are most familiar with are Kenyan politicians. Now, the New Zealand politicians may be different, but I still need evidence.
That this has actually happened.
Sincerely, I
I
do.
think also the media is sort of, when putting things out, they're more rigorous in checking the veracity, or making sure that people are telling the truth, because the media can be held to account there, and there would be backlash, of course, from the public. So I tend to trust what comes out of the West to a certain extent. Something like this, it's a pretty big statement for her to make when she's being so specific, and she says 92,000 jobs. That's a figure that we can actually go back and check. So I think she would be careful about that. That's what makes me
What's
trust.
the population of Australia? Does anybody know?
Not offhand.
You've told us 4 point something.
No, that's New Zealand.
Oh, no, it's New Zealand. All right.
Different country. One is that small, and the other one is the bigger.
I didn't know we were
the
discussing
bigger one.
two other Okay, so are we discussing Australia
No,
now?
there's a reason I'm getting to this, because right now Australia is actually known in the media. They're offering people employment. They're saying they want people to come in. They want people to be employed. Size of country, they're on just 27 million, right? Why I brought in the issue of population is because it actually does impact on the country's development. If you have a growing population, a lot of your money is actually going to be going into educating them, making sure that they're well. But if you have an aging population, yes, you have problems, yes, but not quite the same as one with a growing population. Now, if you have resources that have not been fully utilized, like we have in what they call less developed countries, emerging economies, in my opinion, underdeveloped countries, third world countries, then your problems will be magnified simply because everything around you is not fully developed. Okay? So, kudos to her. Well done. Excellent. But how on earth are we comparing the two? What is the point of comparison?
It's about delivery. It's about what you promised to do and what you actually end up
Look
doing.
at one example. We just had the conversation
So
for
we
an
need
hour.
to underpromise.
In
Is
terms
that the
of
solution?
Well,
Do
we
we
should
need
just
not to
not
promise so
say
much?
anything
Focus.
at all.
Yeah, just
No,
focus.
don't
Say-
say, you want to give people
Say
hope,
I'll
but
have
also
these 4 items. This is
We've
the
given
big 4
people
agenda.
hope.
There's
We
going to
give
be
people
food security.
hope
There's going to
over-
be manufacturing.
also by
There's going to be
creating these
housing.
pledges.
And then look back and say, so in terms of food security, this is where we are in food security. In terms of manufacturing, this is where we are in because I promised not to move
It's a
from
target.
to 2%. I
Something
promised
as simple
food
as
security.
food security, get long English.
It's too big.
Something as simple as birth certificate. When you were born, give me paper saying that I was born. Death certificate, give me paper saying that someone died. Something as simple as that has posed a challenge. Before we even start getting to food security, one long thing that you want to call, before we even get to that, something as simple and basic as that is what is going to peg us and keep us down as emerging economy. Come on.
So, but what if we actually started now listing the kind of things that this government has done in the last how many years again? 7 years? Yes. So Huduma numbers. How many Huduma numbers do we have in the country?
What did you want to do?
Huduma centers, you mean?
Okay.
Huduma
Okay,
centers.
center. Let's stay away from
No one
that.
has a Huduma number
That's
yet.
a contentious.
Huduma centers.
Are we
Huduma centers.
Are we
What is
becoming
Huduma
facetious
centers?
in our comparisons?
Huduma centers
Okay.
is about.
How many New Zealanders have won the Boston Marathon?
or the New York Marathon.
That has nothing to do with governments.
Or got to run 59.
Precisely.
We wouldn't be as successful if it did.
We're
It's
talking
government.
about development.
Development,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Okay?
Achievements.
Yes.
Achievements.
What she's
of
done
government.
is excellent. But even as I criticize our government, and they need to be criticized vociferously, it isn't as though they do absolutely nothing. That actually is the truth. But one expects them to uphold a higher standard, because when you are paying for a service, the least you can expect is to get the service.
And when are we going to cross over to that other world?
Which other world?
We were talking about emerging
From
economies.
mediocrity to excellence.
From mediocrity to excellence.
No.
You know the problem with
tells
Du.
us-
She's been watching these Western. She's ingested a lot of Western media and watching Netflix and
Oh,
so
so
on.
you sit
and
with
so
me in
her
the house when this
expectations
happens.
are
She does.
informed.
Mm.
Her
She
expectations.
does.
I've called you, Du, and you said you're
Yes,
watching.
and
your
you're watching
You're
Netflix.
watching Netflix.
Watching Netflix at this
The
point.
mistake you made was not to ask her what she was
Was
watching.
watching at that
Yes.
time,
Yes.
or in which company she
She
was
was
abiding.
in, yes.
So
There's
what
carry on.
happens?
nothing wrong with holding us to a level of excellence, whether
Yes,
you want
but
to
our
look at it at this point.
expectations cannot be
And that-
informed
yes, but
by
then
Western
what you-
development.
The
We have to
danger,
understand where they've
the
come from, what
danger
their
that
history is.
no. When you want to say where we've come from, where
Do
our
as a
history of
point.
colonialism, then you now want to use that and peg that to why you cannot do something simple like giving somebody a document that pertains to their rights of birth or
Are you
death.
saying there's nothing?
Come on.
Those are
there's-
symptoms. The fact
Are you
that we
saying there's
can't
no
give a
simple
birth
thing that
certificate
can be
is
done
more
in
of a
New Zealand?
symptom.
What?
Are you saying there's no simple thing that cannot be that the
That's
people
not
of New
what I'm
Zealand have-
saying. I
have
am saying
no complaint
that we
about
want
the
to say
government?
that we're always looking for excellence. Why shouldn't we? And we're saying that
Do-
we are dogged by
Do
so
it's-
many
it's,
things.
It's Monday morning.
It's a good
if
thing.
Eric is exhibiting signs of slow thinking,
It's Monday. It's the blues.
Monday.
Things are being
By the
held.
time we get to 9,
We are being too
he
negative.
will have picked
No.
up the tempo and
we
he
cannot.
will be with
Yeah,
you.
we
Ndu,
cannot.
ndu,
No, we
ndu.
come so
Don't be-
no.
don't
There
be
will
too
not allow you to
negative.
do that.
Don't be
No,
too
we
negative.
cannot continue to say that because we've been dogged by so many things. Oh, we have had colonialism hanging on our shoulders like a monkey all this time, and for that reason, that is why we cannot do certain
It
things.
was quite
Oh,
disruptive.
No,
you know,
I'm
We
actually-
cannot live on that forever.
And I'm
I
not
am
saying
not-
we
get
are.
off.
I am
I mean,
actually
in,
not
in,
saying
in,
we
in
are.
Black
Some
America,
point.
slavery was 400 years ago, and they still feel the effects and repercussions and
I am
consequences
actually
of that.
saying that a government like this government, we've seen these politicians, the deputy president especially, is very good at enumerating what they've done. And he comes out and says, so rural electrification, we talk about the Huduma centers around the country. What is that doing? It's improving efficiency of and access to government service. They'll talk about all these things. If you told William Ruto today, take 2 minutes and tell us
it's
what
a
your government
PR
has done,
stunt.
my friend, he'll tell you why 2 minutes. But he'll also do it in 2 minutes, and he'll list more things than this Prime Minister of New Zealand.
So when are we going to break that ceiling that we keep
What
talking about?
ceiling?
So we should, because we've achieved, we should stay where we are and say, okay, we've done so
What are
well
we comparing?
based on what.
No, wait.
Even if we
What
are,
is the point of comparison here?
I think what Eric is trying to say is the premise of your argument, i.e., this woman's PR stunt. Anybody can do that. We can actually list, and they would be genuine.
And they'll be
things
there.
that the Kenyan government have done, and they would be true and authentic. And you can list them. This is a PR stunt, and it's not something that we should use as a blueprint for where we should be.
No,
why not? Wait,
look.
Why not? I want to hear the why not.
Because
Why not?
we also have our achievements that we could list. So listening to other people's achievements, remember their problems, their dynamics, we've said the population, everything is very different. So we don't listen to their list of achievements and then say, oh, we're not doing well. That is excellence. We're mediocre.
Yes.
If you look at our, in terms of something like our growth, our economy, it's our growth is bigger than theirs. So theirs is at 3%.
No.
Ours is at 5-point-something%.
Jerry.
But of course, that's taking into account that our economy, of course, was behind. So there's more scope for growth as a rate.
Now, what you are doing is a good exercise in PR.
No,
Yes.
I'm giving you an example of why you can't
Very good
compare
exercise in
apples and
PR.
oranges.
You know, you guys make
you've gotta
PR
compare
sound like
like
it's a
for
bad
like.
thing. PR is not a negative trade.
No, it isn't
PR
negative.
is a good word for propaganda,
Yes,
my
putting
dear.
your best foot forward.
No, it's
Putting your
it's-
best foot forward, even if you have 2 left feet. That's
Yes, you look at the longer one, the bigger foot. But also, here's the thing: we don't have to be negative all the time. Just because somebody
What's
else has actually
negative about what Ndu is suggesting?
that, you know,
No,
we are
but
still,
we could do
we are sti-
exactly
we are
the
still
same. We
stuck.
could get Ruto to give us a list of all the achievements.
He does it
and
all the
he'll
time.
Do it. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
And then we could put that and make it get viral and
We
and-
can,
and
but
say we're doing
unfortunately-
great.
to what end?
Unfortunately, we know that a lot of what our politicians say is precisely that, what they say. It has very little
gosh.
bearing on what is actually done. Yes, they say it, and Our politicians solve problems
And-
by stating solutions.
And
not by
similarly, you'll find a lot of rhetoric and a lot of things being paid lip service, even in the West, even in New Zealand. You
I
find them
agree
saying a lot of
completely.
things that they don't do. So we shouldn't be comparing ourselves.
We should.
Our economy
because
is
they're
different,
similar
our
to us.
population.
But you
How
see,
are they
Jerry,
similar to us?
You've just said it. They also have negative things. We also have negative things.
That's
We have
global.
some
That's
positive
universal.
things. Yes.
Now, if we
So-
want to compare ourselves to other countries, we need to pick countries that have similar history, similar population, similar background, that sort of thing,
Where we
which
are
are
together.
recent,
No. That is
which
one
are
way of looking at
democratizing or in
it.
the process of democratizing, and so on. Look at the
That
economy; it
is
must be similar.
one way of looking
similar resources and so on. Then we
One
can
way.
say it is our politicians failing. All things kept constant, it is our leaders and our politicians failing us. But once you pick a country with a population of 4 million who have a serious economy in terms
excuse
of
me, Madam Headmistress, I'm
A
looking
quarter
at
to,
it. No,
it's
excuse
a
me.
quarter to 9. It's a
Yes.
quarter to 9. Mwalimu, wait. It's a quarter to 9. 0719 012600. I'm going to open up the phone lines now.
Yes.
Right? And see if anybody else agrees with Ndu and CT Muga this morning. I doubt anybody else would. Well, let's hear.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Waramuga, before I pick up this call, you had your hand up.
No, I put it down again.
He was
Okay.
about to
Let's-
reprimand me for having said something, Mr. Headmaster.
Let's put it up again. Say something. What did you want to say?
No. Let's bring in the callers.
I'm going to be talking to the callers. I'm going to be talking to the callers off the line, but I want you to actually come back and because there's a point that you wanted to raise here, and maybe even Ndu can come in with it.
The point I wanted to make was this: there are no set rules for comparison. You can compare, you can use a point of comparison that suits your purposes. I think the point that Ndu was bringing forth was, here is a prime minister that is actually telling you something that she most probably has done, and it's an achievement that has been realized within 2 years. 2-year period they've achieved this. And she was juxtaposing against leaders who have promised things for the last 7 years, have projects that range between 128 to probably 1.2 million, and one doesn't see them actually being accomplished. It was this comparison, not that they're better. No,
No,
here's
I
a
never said they were
leader
better. No, I
who
didn't
is
say they were
who is-
better. But have we
No,
seen the
finish,
promises
Siti.
that she broke?
Finish City.
Maybe she also broke some promises. Because you're saying our leaders have broken promises. Maybe she's broken some promises.
It's possible. Maybe even her grandfather invented the wheel in New Zealand. We don't know this. All I'm saying is, given what she has done within 2 years, we have similar cases of things that have been promised for more than 2 years. They haven't been done. Things have been promised for even a longer period, but they haven't been done. It is a good comparison. Someone says they're going to do something within a period of time and they've done it. Why don't we make promises and fulfill them within the period of time we have said we're going to? It is a good comparison.
There's some promises that have been fulfilled in the time that we were told.
Within
There's
the
some
time.
that have been broken.
Yeah.
Jerry,
There's some that have
it
been
rains
fulfilled.
in some parts of the country and not in others also. Surely, come on.
No,
Yes.
why should you have this blanket view of the government having failed us and then compare it
Excuse
with
me,
a lady?
where was the blanket? Where was the blanket?
Well,
view?
I've just said there's some
No,
promises
where
that
was
have been
it
fulfilled.
in what I said? Where was blanket?
Your reaction to me stating that the government has fulfilled some promises.
It wasn't my reaction to you. I was actually making a completely separate point.
All right, your point had
Remember,
nothing to do with what I just
you
said.
interjected and brought in your conversation into mine. So now you're confusing your
No,
conversation with
no.
mine. Two different conversations,
No,
Jerry.
what I'm saying is
Two
the government
different
has
conversations.
delivered on some promises, and we could do the same and list them. So it's this thing of taking something, a PR exercise from another country, and then bringing it to us. And this is what is informing now our expectations of us as a country. We have
Jerry,
to
you've
understand-
missed the point.
No,
What
no,
I'm
no, no,
making.
no, no,
no,
no.
I'm
You've missed
making
the
another
point.
point.
That's
I'm
not what is
missing any
informing
points.
our expectations.
you've
It
missed the
doesn't
point,
inform
actually.
our expectations.
What's informing your expectations?
My expectations are informed by the fact that certain things don't happen the way they have said they would.
That's it. Simple.
Period.
So it's the promises.
Are there certain
Period.
things that
It's not
happen
even-
the way they say they would?
Some do.
Some do.
Yes,
I'm
and
saying-
they would also
and
list
I
them
am
in 2
saying-
minutes.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But I'm saying that we are
Look,
stuck. We keep saying
the
we are
reason why
emerging, moving.
we bring
When are
up
we going
these
to break?
issues-
Look, we're doing
We
better.
can't
We're
even
emerging.
talk. We're emerging. We've been emerging for the last how long? And we're still emerging. We're not breaking surface. Why?
Yeah,
we
you
are.
have,
Why?
No. We are breaking services.
you have to
too.
look at the barriers. I keep
That
talking
one you
about-
have to look. The sort of theft that has taken place. It's very difficult to find countries that compare with us. Two entire dams just disappear. That is not something that you're going to achieve very easily.
I've got a call on the line.
Yes.
Ruben calling in from Eldoret. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Morning.
Hello.
Nice conversation.
Thank you.
Now, may I just chip in my 2 cents worth of input here?
Make it 10, please.
Now, if I pull the two issues that have come to the table, you know, the systemic problems we have, and now the economic comparison you guys are putting out here. Now, I have a bit of a problem because the first thing I ask myself is, what are we really dealing with as a country?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we are dealing with an economic problem. We are dealing with a very serious disease. It's like someone who's bleeding. We are bleeding seriously, and you want to fix that bleeding by giving someone Coca-Cola to drink or something. If the Titanic is sinking, there's no way you can stay up there saying, we've got the best pilots, we've got the best systems on board. Kenya is sinking. And so even to start a conversation of comparing it with a 4 to 5 million population country and so on is really out of the question. What we need is first aid as a country, because we cannot compare a sinking country with any other country.
With a flying country.
with a flying country. So I mean, we've got, say, much more than Rwanda. We've got a port. We've got a lot of human resource. We've got a lot.
Yeah.
I think we know that compared to Israel, compared to any other country in the world. The issue is management of this economy. The issue is leadership. And we can talk all we want, but if we are thinking, we are going nowhere. So actually, I've been asking myself, what is it we need as a country to be able to then get the hemorrhage stopped? I think doing things the same way we've done is not going to help us. Expecting an election in 2022 with the rhetoric we have is not going to help us. An IEBC is going to be disbanded. Something is going to happen and we'll be back to where we've been. So personally, I think what we need in this country is a benevolent dictator.
Jerry is smiling.
Who will call the shots and say something has got to stop. I'm not talking about a Matiang'i here and someone toothless that will talk and do nothing. We need somebody who will say, be corrupt one more time and I'll jail you for real.
For real.
For real. It's not about coming to the media and
It's not rhetoric.
It's not about this year we've done this and this year we're planning to do this. It's guys, we are thinking, stop.
But Mwalimu, how do we identify this dictator, benevolent as they may be?
How do we select him?
How do we pick that? And what does that do to our current constitution? Are we also putting it aside?
It's for me to listen to the four of you and to decide who among you is going to be the man or the woman. because I mean everybody will come up there and say I'm the man, but we know them. We know who.
So what if we get the wrong dictator, and because he's a dictator, there's no dissent, that's marginalized, we can't speak up against him, the media is gagged, he changes the constitution so he can stay there for long? What if that happens in this quest for a benevolent dictator? What if we just get a dictator?
The what if is irrelevant. The issue is who among us is a better dictator right now.
Now, how do we find that? How do we find the benevolent dictator? This is it. It's like waiting for the Messiah. How do we find the right person? If you have a dictatorship where you don't have the institutions...
Like waiting for the Messiah, you assume that there are no Messiahs. The issue is that there are Messiahs here who never get up there. So, for example, what would it take? I mean, just, to use your argument. Supposing I knew that C.T. Muga is the man. Would you guys rally behind me by saying, yes.
Hypothetically
if he was the
speaking.
man... I have a personal opinion on that one.
I'm not letting him get that compliment.
If you were to say that C.T. Muga was a man, then
the question is, when I put this man out there, or when a critical mass, a critical number of us say he is the man, is everybody else able to see that he is the man? That is the problem we would have. And it's not that we have, we lack such leaders. If you went to the grassroots, even in the counties, in the constituencies, we have good people. But they never get up there. So even to then get such a dictator into office is going to be,
gonna be hard.
How do the Chinese get their brand of leaders who we like calling dictators?
Huh?
The Chinese, for instance, they have their leaders whom we like calling dictators. How do they get their leaders?
I wouldn't even go as far as China. I would go to Rwanda. Because they came out of a worse situation than us. More than 1 million people dead is hell. So how did they do it? I think, just my last visit to Rwanda told me that it just takes a person saying enough is enough. And I mean, and the country, the country of Kenya knows now that enough is enough. So all we need is somebody to pull the trigger.
What we need for sure is less democracy.
Or C.T. Muga.
It's one of them. Thank you very much, Ruben.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Ruben.
He talks of somebody saying enough is enough. But of course, we have a democratic system and we have a judiciary and we have processes and right to a fair trial. So Uhuru can say enough is enough, but by the time we take this guy to trial and convict him and get him to jail, there's so many opportunities to block that process, and corruption does fight back. So an example of why we don't need to be as democratic as we are,
Uhuru
not
can
until
come
we
with an
reach economic
initiative and
development.
call it Break Corruption Initiative. Watch a building bridge, Break Corruption Initiative, and we will support it. We'll go into a referendum.
We'll support it whereby people's rights are taken away from them.
Yes.
So you don't have the same rights to a fair trial as a human being.
We the people.
If it's corruption.
We the people will give Uhuru the power to do what he needs to do. This is it. I mean, the Constitution is written by the people and it's for the people. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. So Nduoko is drawing parallels between the Prime Minister of New Zealand and the emerging economies. What are you saying again before we go to the break?
Well, I don't know if I'm drawing parallels. What I'm saying is that look at what somebody has been able to do, or look at what a team and governance has been able to do over time after where maybe they promised or didn't promise. And I say we have been emerging for quite some time. And if there's focus and there's determination and there's the will to actually get something done, it is clear with an example of this that it is possible for it to be done. But we don't.
And
we
why
try.
don't we?
Exactly. Just like I've said.
What do
because
you
the
think?
will is not there. The will to actually achieve excellence is not there.
Do you agree with Nduoko this morning? 0719-012-600. Let me give the number again slowly. 0719-012-600. You can also comment via our Facebook page where we are live streaming, Spice FM KE, and via the hashtag on Twitter, The Situation Room. Our Twitter handle is Spice FM KE. We are also live streaming on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
right, it's opening it up a little bit on Kiambu Road, which was previously not moving at all, trying to get onto Thika Road. Waiaki Way near Safaricom is actually not moving as such right now, and that's all trying to get into the CBD. Coming off of Langata Road and off Ngong Road, interestingly enough, it's moving a little bit smoother than it was before. All right, so Mombasa Road traffic is still giving us a little bit of a nightmare, whereby we're trying to get to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, not as fast as we hoped we would, and Langata Road also posing a bit of a problem still. Getting roundabout to the hour where traffic should actually dissipate. Let's see what happens in about 30 minutes or so. But for now, if you're in traffic, you'll get out eventually. That's what we say here. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. If you find an alternate route, that would be great. Let us know and we'll share the information.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Let's go straight to the phone lines. I have Susie who's calling in from Kiambu. Good morning, Susie.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Good morning, Susie.
Well, I don't hear enough women on the radio, calling in. So every so often I feel that I have to do my little bit to remind you people that 52% of us are female, including your mom.
Yes. Wow, there you go.
All right. So we're talking about the Ardennes and how she's done some stuff. I would like to point out that she was pregnant and gave birth and took some time off while she was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I would like to point out. But one of the things that really upsets me about you guys sometimes is that you don't get to the foundation of the problems. Like we just had somebody call in and say that you want a benevolent dictator. First of all, take a look at every place in the world where you've had a dictator. What happened before, what happened during, what happened after. It is not a system that you want.
I think the operative word here is benevolent.
The operative word is dictator.
No, benevolent. But go on.
Because a dictator is a person. He's going to live or she's going to live and they're going to die. And while they're inside there, they will become weak and they will become influenced and everything. You need not a person to save you, but you need the system. And the problem is the system is not working. Like now, if you have a supermarket, you have all these cashiers whom you hire. Some are honest, some are dishonest. But how is it that they all sit there at the door, next to the door, mind you, and the supermarket still makes money? Whether you've got good ones or bad ones, you have set up a system that people cannot steal that money easily. They cannot steal goods easily. And so it doesn't matter whether you have a benevolent manager dictator or you have a not benevolent manager dictator. The thing is that the system is what's taking care of you. And in Kenya, we do not have a system that's taking care of us. And we're not looking to build a system that's taking care of us. We're looking to do some other rubbish. Now, one of the reasons why Africa is so far behind is because when we got independence, we accepted a lot of the United Nations treaties and conditions and all this other stuff. But there are some we did not accept. And the one that we did not accept, which I'm really, really, really upset about, is anti-slavery. Slavery still exists. And if you don't believe me, just look at what BBC is talking about, Kuwait and all these other people being shipped to the Gulf. We have slavery still. And the reason why our men refuse to accept anti-slavery, why they refuse to abolish slavery, is they said, but we want to sell the women. So this business of gender, you're not going to get anywhere until you abolish slavery.
Susan.
Now, if you have, yes.
Our constitution takes care of that little matter that you're referring to very comprehensively. Under
Okay,
in the Bill of Rights, it deals with the issue of slavery very, very comprehensively. But please continue.
Okay, let me continue. Now, remember we promulgated that constitution in August 2010.
Yes.
Okay, so in August 2010, the people voted and the people said, we want the constitution. We want the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights specifically addresses slavery, as you have said, right?
It does.
Especially, okay, fine. So now, in October 2010, our parliament, the 10th parliament, the Maputo Declaration, they put in reservations saying that when it comes to women, we can marry anybody and we can do whatever we want. We are going to maintain slavery. So now they refused. They specifically said to the African Union, because it's an African Union treaty, we are going to do what we want with our women. They're still going to be slaves, and that was done in October after August. So when you're saying that the Bill of Rights is there, look at how we are treated by our parliament and everything. But the problem is this: in Europe, all these countries, they had slaves before, they had serfs, and they have in their ancient whatever rules that free men are to be treated one way and slaves are to be treated another. So when a woman is a slave, her child is a slave. Which means that all
Could I just interject and ask a question?
Yes.
Please, if I may. There's something you're trying to say. What is it?
What I'm trying to say is this.
Yes.
We have destroyed our system so that we can put money in offshore banks where it can be eaten by other people. So this business of having a bad system and saying that no, it is this man who will save you, it is this man who will save you, you are waiting for the gods of cargo. That is what you're doing. You're waiting for a Messiah, and a man will not save you. What you have to do is to save yourself by building a system that people cannot, mismanage. So if this guy is weak, or somebody puts a gun to his head, or somebody threatens his wife and kids, your dictator will not suddenly crumble.
Okay, it's a bit
So
more
what you're
complex.
saying,
Running
okay.
a country is a bit more complex than running a supermarket. So it's an interesting analogy there. But we have to look at countries that actually have what we would call benevolent dictators, or a sense of authoritarianism at the top. And this is what most countries had previously. And they reached economic development before democratizing. Now we're being forced to democratize before reaching economic development. So that's
And
where
they
the
got-
problem lies. So it's not quite like running a supermarket. And you can look at
They got
Rwanda, you can look at Ethiopia.
development.
We need to reach
They got
economic development before we democratize.
They got economic development by oppressing people. Is that what you want to do?
That was
Because
one of the ways, but also they didn't have the democracy that they impose on us in terms of public participation, 5-year presidencies. They didn't have sort of interruptions even in their leadership that led to leads. Well, we see it when we see the politicking.
Did they oppress people?
Yes, there was oppression. Absolutely, they used a lot of slavery. I'm not saying that's what we want.
You've got your
but
answer,
they used
Susie.
a lot of
So
slavery
yes,
to get there.
there was
They did
oppression of the
oppress
people.
enjoy your dictatorship. Continue.
Susie, have a good day, and
Susie.
thank you
Have a
very
good
much for
day.
calling. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. So if we go back into looking at what the Premier of New Zealand, what she was saying, we have achieved this, and what Ndu you're raising this morning, that yes, we also have leaders in our developing countries, we're calling it developing, right? Developing countries. Emerging economies.
Third world.
Emerging economies.
Emerging economies who also make promises, but they do not deliver. And it's like they actually have no intention of delivering, and that's why they don't even come out to say.
The problem is that the promises are made on the cusp of elections a lot of times, and hoping that people will put them into power based on those promises. And unfortunately, then a majority of those promises then are not fulfilled. And I think it must be the other way around. There must be that, if the desire is there to actually see countries move forward. So the promises should not come as bait to be able to put them in positions of leadership, but it should come as it should not come in form of promise. It should be something that you realize, this is my job. This is what I actually need to do to put this country to move it forward, basically, or to develop it to a certain degree. And it should not be hinged on a vote that you would get. that's fine. In fact, if we're going to say make promises, then make sure that you actually do fulfill them. If that's what you're going to use to get your foot in the door, then when you actually sit on that seat or in that position, make a mental note. Write it down if you must. And make sure that some of the things that you say that you're going to do, they're actually done. And then we don't have these issues where we talk about projects, counties, numbers that the mind sometimes cannot fathom, of things that have begun and then are not completed. And we're not going to talk about them beyond that.
You know what you're saying is something, there's a phrase Kenyans use called benchmarking. Okay? So it's saying, you don't have to make promises if you know you can't keep them.
Thank you. Just keep quiet.
I think they intend
don't
to
talk.
keep them. No. I think their intentions are noble. They
No.
And then maybe
For
the
example,
system or
I'll give you an
financial
example.
constraints.
Jerry, which
don't allow
politicians
them
are you
to.
speaking about?
I'll give you an
Kenyans?
example, Jerry. Just last week, William Ruto, the deputy president, told members of Kibera, vote us in and we will do this. It should be the other way around. So now you're doing this is pegged. You're doing this
the very
is
essence
pegged
of
to their
campaigning,
voting.
Promises and pledges.
That's what I'm saying.
This
Don't
is the
do
very
it.
No,
Don't do
but
it
he
because
means
you're left.
He probably
doesn't
means it,
mean
and he has
You're
every intention to do that.
You're
but the system
sacrificing the
won't let
people.
him.
You're sacrificing the people on the altar of these promises.
Jerry is telling you something and you should pay attention. The essence of politicking is to lie.
Is to lie.
Yes.
This is
And
it.
say so that we can get votes. Just lie.
Just
And in
lie.
the interim,
Get
so
the
that
votes.
the next 5 years, then we can
Damn
do,
the consequences.
as CT would say, willy-nilly. And then you can do whatever you want for the next 5 years. After all, I made a promise and they were silly enough to put me in power. Let's just carry on and then do whatever we want. Which is what we are seeing.
87.9 in Mombasa. Victor, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I think is,
Yep.
Us Kenyans, we are more efficient when we are scared. Yeah. Like when you see the matatu operators, the only time they follow the rules or they do what they're supposed to do is when they get pressure from the police. And the same thing happens across, I think, the whole of Africa, because even in Rwanda, you have the littering policy, and you have the policy on the pastors. So I think we need a leader who needs to invoke some appropriate level of fear. Yeah, so the guys who are responsible for putting the leaders in, because clearly it's not the voters.
You're appealing to them.
Yeah, please.
The powers that be.
Yeah, they should put in a leader who will inspire some sort of fear from the masses.
Such as? Do you have somebody in mind?
Somebody in mind? Well, the one I have in mind will have to elect him. I don't see that Ruto will have to elect him.
Who, Ruto?
Yeah. I think people. Yeah, he invokes some appropriate level of fear. He will put the system in check. People will be scared of the consequences, and somehow that will have an effect on the development of the country.
A positive one or?
Positive one, yeah. Yeah, I think it will try to reduce the things that are happening now. The economy coming into a crisis.
Why is it in crisis? Corruption has something to do with it?
Yeah, definitely. Corruption has a high. It's what's most responsible for.
Has Ruto been implicated in any corruption cases? Or?
Yes, he has.
But you feel he will come and fight corruption?
Yes. I feel there's a difference because guys will still steal money. But we need someone who will sort of try and control how people are.
Who is stealing rather? Control who is stealing? No.
Yeah. He'll control who is there. Not just
Victor,
not that it is being stolen,
Victor,
but who is stealing
you are
it?
being railed. Do not accept. Don't go down that road. Don't fall for this one, Victor.
But it's interesting.
Thank you for calling, Victor. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
It's interesting that he calls out the DP as a strong leader and maybe somebody who would invoke or elicit fear from the populace or us Kenyans. And there's no doubt about that. That's the general sentiments. There's fear around the DP. But in terms of fighting corruption, I've actually seen him resist the movement. If you remember the audits, the personal lifestyle audits, he was very against it. Of course, usually it's his spokesman, Murkomen, that speaks up, usually. Of course, when Rotich was arrested, they say, it's our guy. So in terms of the fight against corruption, I don't see that spirit living on through Ruto, to be honest. Of course, Uhuru has kickstarted it, and you can see it's a very rigorous fight, and there's a lot that's being done. But I don't see... Why do you laugh? But
so we've made one comparison with the deputy president, and then we go to the president and said, "No,
you can see he's serious about corruption at the moment." Serious. Yes, right. Look at sort of the level
at the moment.
The level. Yes, what I'm saying.
Where
is
are those
if Ruto
containers
was
again,
City?
the containers from the port.
Madare.
Madare. All right. So yeah, let's go.
Meaning,
have you ever seen such high level people being arrested, such as Rotich? Would you have imagined that happening in Kenya?
Have I seen a finance minister in court? I have seen several finance ministers in court.
Yes. Some died with cases that had actually not been concluded.
Yeah, they hadn't started.
You can see the fight against corruption now is serious.
No, that presidency wasn't Uhuru's. That's what I think Eric is trying to tell you. So we've had those cases. The point you're making, Jerry, is a valid one.
Thank you. I like that you qualify my point, CT.
No, it's a valid point. It's a valid point because you see, I'm thinking of the presidency. I'm thinking of the president, and I'm thinking that particular job is infinitely more difficult than we make it seem in our discussions. And what a president probably has to deal with is infinitely more than even I understand or people who purport to understand. So sometimes the president can be judged harshly. And this particular one, I feel, is often judged unnecessarily harshly because he has a presidency that no other president in this country has ever
absolutely. As I always say, one thing the government failed to do is actually communicate the constitution and how it changed the administration and the way this country runs. So we had become accustomed to sort of decrees, roadside decrees, or people shouting and you're jailed today for corruption and so on. This is a completely new system. The president does not have the powers that his predecessors did. First of all, of course, they've been devolved to a certain extent. But most importantly, there's limitations and checks and balances with the separation of powers. So the president cannot have somebody jailed. Now, we had become accustomed to that way of things working that way. Actually, no. Previously, you didn't have the independence of the judiciary entrenched in our constitution. You didn't have the independence of the judiciary as we do now in our constitution.
Right.
So the president cannot guide the judiciary per se. He doesn't have they went against him. They annulled a whole election. I mean, that's pretty telling of how independent the judiciary is in this administration. And it's very telling of how robust our democracy is under Uhuru. So people need to understand Uhuru does not have the powers to investigate, charge, convict, arrest, and so on. And that's what people expect. People are baying for blood in terms of, they want these...
Jerry, does the president have the power to appoint people?
That's what I was going to say. He may not have the power to do it. I mean, we're asking him to run
but once you've appointed judges...
But he has the power to appoint.
You've appointed judges,
then you're not doing their job.
No, they go through parliament. There's many checks and balances in between.
Yes, but
they go through parliament and they're chosen... So
like
you want him to remove judges until they convict people?
Presently, he's exercising that power by refusing to appoint some judges of the Court of Appeal.
Absolutely.
He's exercising his powers.
He's arm twisting. Yes. And
that exercise of his power can also be counter-checked. So it's all a balance. He doesn't have the powers that people think
that he can use.
Yeah, that people think he does. He cannot arrest and stop corruption. There's no silver bullet. It's not going to happen overnight. The fact that we're seeing senior level ministers here, we're seeing, are they CSs we call them today? We're seeing CSs facing charges. That was unheard of. That is a seriously big move in terms of the fight against corruption. But we have to understand corruption will fight back for starters. There's bottlenecks. The law is an ass. It's not an easy process because we have to stick within our constitution, right to a fair trial.
Why do we say the law is an ass?
It really is. Look at Kidero, for instance. I want to give you an example. Kidero.
It carries a heavy load.
Or ass as in donkey.
Yes, that.
No. I meant both. But
not anatomy.
I want us to revisit, and I keep revisiting this issue, but I think it paints a very good picture of the restrictions and bottlenecks we meet when we're trying to fight corruption as a country and try and do it within our constitutional framework where people are still entitled to their rights as human beings, their human rights, right to a fair trial and so on. So we are not able, or the government is not able, the DPP is not able to investigate Kidero because there's court orders or there's judges have decided that any evidence obtained by looking at his wife's account, for instance, or looking at his accounts, is inadmissible in a court. So that becomes a loophole, a technical loophole through which Kidero can get away. So the DPP has evidence. Here we are, evidence you have stolen. But this evidence is not admissible in a court of law because of the law being an ass. As a result, Kidero cannot be convicted of the corruption that went on while he was...
If it is felt that this particular gentleman was as corrupt as they'd like us to believe, then it is clear that it wasn't just this one thing. There must have been many other things.
No, but I'm just giving an example.
Yes.
When it comes to evidence and
Where are the
admissibility, it's crucial.
And I'm saying, if you know, if I am going to take someone to court based on a certain law, the onus is on me to ensure that I understand those loopholes and to have other pieces of evidence.
But how else are
that
we
can
going to
circumvent.
investigate them? No, it's the
This
idea.
is
How
just
do we
one.
investigate
Come
them?
on.
No, this is a good example. It's a classic example, and that's why I keep bringing it up, where the courts have come in the way of actually curbing corruption. They are the bottleneck in the system, the
But
judiciary.
Jerry, this example you're giving for me, to me, sounds like a very good example of how robust our judicial system is. Meaning,
It
someone will not
guarantees-
just take you to court and
Which
you
Right.
jail.
Absolutely,
Because
which
they
I don't have
realize
a
that the
problem
process
with.
things.
I don't have a problem with that. Right to a fair trial and so on.
Yes.
But what I'm saying, can you see how it hinders the fight against corruption when it comes to securing conviction?
Yeah, it hinders a dictator from basically just going around and looking at you and feeling, I don't like Njeri, and so let's take her to court. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. You've been having the conversation 0719-012-600. You can also contribute to all our conversations on Twitter via the hashtag The Situation Room and on our Facebook page, Spice FM KE. Good morning. It's 21 minutes past 9.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
We received
FM,
calls this morning
Nairobi.
from Nyandarua, that should be in Nyeri, 90.9, Mombasa, 87.9, 102.5, Kisumu, Nakuru, we are on 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, and of course, we're broadcasting in Nairobi on 94.4. We also broadcast on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Siti Muga, Nduoko, Jerry Thorne. It's Monday, and therefore, it's Succession Mondays.
Of which we had a taste of earlier on because we couldn't resist. We had to talk about what's going on in Kibra. It's too exciting a piece of news for us not to analyze and deconstruct.
It's this week's
It's
story.
happening. Exciting stuff, no doubt. Just quickly, I'll tell you, I think ODM will take this. And I think Jubilee will then appeal, and there'll be a court case, and the sort of tussle, the tussle will go on. My crystal ball this weekend, I asked it her. I think it's a lady. I asked her what's happening in Kibra. I really need to know, and all I could see was courts, and I could also see an ODM victory before the courts. So the only conclusion to draw there was that Okoth will win this election, and I think there'll be an appeal from the Jubilee, from the Tanga side. That's where I see this going. So it'll be interesting. At least the elections will play out for a little bit longer, and it will be interesting. And they've given us an insight, or they've actually been informing my crystal ball, these elections and the campaigns, with regards to central leadership. Very interesting. Of course, there was utterances that there was a vacuum, and with the president being his last term, people were looking to who would be the next leader. And I think we see a lady emerging. For her to put herself on the podium the way she did over the weekend and actually go against the grain and go against sort of conventional support for the party, which is what a lot of people were doing. A lot of people have been very scared to come out. Commander has come out and he said openly he's supporting ODM. I think Murathe has also said openly he's supporting ODM. Other than that, we haven't had any actual elected leaders come out this openly and actually drive against their own party. So it could be questioned, are they not towing the party line? I mean, do you realize how absurd and how stretching it this is. There's two candidates in an election, and you go and support the candidate in the opposing party. That is a step in leadership. That is her saying, this is where we stand, and I am making this decision, and I'm showing you, so follow me. So my crystal ball is telling me Anne Waiguru is the next Kikuyu leader in terms of as leadership for Central.
She's the next kingpin.
Kingpin. That too.
Kingmaker or queen?
Queen.
Queen pin.
Well, that too. That comes with a position, isn't it, as leader of your voting bloc? But I do see Anne Waiguru there. That was a bold move.
Interestingly, I always remember there's an interview though she had appeared on an interview on KTN News when she was still the CS for devolution, and it was a big ministry, and that time she was being touted as the most powerful CS, and she was asked, would you ever venture into politics? And her answer was immediate. It was categorical. It was what's the other word? She very clear,
uncompromising, crystal clear.
Everything. No. And she said, no, I am not a politician. Politics is not for me.
Until she realized her job was politics in the first instance.
And then she realized actually politics is lighter duties.
It's everything.
And she got into lighter duties. And here she is now. And in fact, to a point where your crystal ball is actually seeing her as the leader of an entire bloc.
Absolutely. In terms of succession politics in 2022, I mean, this is a bold move. She's actually standing with the opposition. She's holding hands with Raila. That speaks volumes, even for Ruto support.
Is holding hands with.
Do you know? If you listen to what Jerry is saying, the intonation is, "Can you imagine? Anne Waiguru is holding on to a snake." Huh?
No, there's no undertones here. There's no rhetoric in what I'm saying. It is what it is.
The wonderment in her tone.
But she just didn't even attend the function. She actually came to the point whereby it's a public display of the camaraderie that has come out of this. Yeah, absolutely.
If you actually look at those two positions, where just a couple of years ago, where Anne Waiguru was, the things that were said about her by the person whose hand she was holding in this particular rally.
Heavily polarized.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed. It's a seismic shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Complete.
Yes.
It's a complete one. Who are her competitors in this region?
It's actually, the reason I say it's a bold move, let's look at sort of the undercurrents here in the backdrop of what we're talking about. Because, of course, there was the promise by Central, or the perceived promise by Central, to vote for Ruto. This move, her going to Kibra and supporting Raila, is a bold statement. Me, my county, my constituents, my people, me as a leader, we're not supporting Ruto. This is what she's saying here. She's not just saying, I support Raila and I want... I doubt she really cares whether, Okoth is the MP, from a personal perspective, let's say. Even from a political perspective, who the MP of Kibra is not of any concern to Waiguru. But by her making this step, she is saying Central is not Ruto. Because, of course, those were the utterances that have been coming out. Ruto is gaining traction, 33% in Central. This is a leader in Central who has spoken out. This is a bold statement. There's so many layers to what she's done by going and supporting.
Why are we picking this particular one governor? So, yes, she is a governor in Central, yes. But also, let's look at others. There is a CS, Kiunjori, who's stood with Ruto.
This is a governor.
There's a governor.
You see, a CS is
a
appointed.
Appointee.
Is appointed.
They don't have the support.
They don't have the support. They don't have the political legitimacy in terms of support. This is somebody who's elected and can be fired tomorrow. He doesn't carry with him a block
appointed
as such. Yeah. I said
elected.
Sorry, appointed rather.
There's a governor in the name of Waitito who's clearly on.
Have you seen what's happening to him? Is he still
Where
governor?
Where is he now?
He's a governor.
He's plea bargaining somewhere with the DPP.
He'll be back. I mean, this is like City was saying. This is just wins. There's a governor.
And I doubt she would go against the presidency as well. I doubt she would go against the president. I think what she's doing is in line with what the president would want. So this is a very big message. I mean, she's standing holding hands. I'm looking at the Standard newspaper. She's standing holding hands with Raila. right next to him. And then, of course, you have Alfred Mutua and Kivuda Kibwana on the other side as well. And we'll look at those. So this is really also a platform for these kingpins to come out, these sort of leaders of certain regions or certain communities to come out. And she has come out.
Does she
very
have the
She's
strongly.
come out very
in Central?
strongly.
Does
But
she
then
have-
at the same time, this is somebody who said not less than 3 months ago, she talked about the fact that Raila's control over the country cannot be ignored. And now she comes, 3 months later and is holding hands with the president that she said controls half the country. Here I am in a clear camaraderie or alliance, aligning myself with the person who controls the other half of the country. She's sending a message and she's very clear
You
about what
asked
it is
an
that
interesting
she's saying.
question. Does she have the clout?
In Central.
What we understand, absolutely, she's loved. She's totally adored in Central. I mean, she was voted in by
she was
her
voted
constituents,
in by about
by
half,
her county.
About half of her county. The other half voted for her.
Well, no.
opponents.
We
Yes,
know-
The other
we know
half
the
was
numbers.
split.
We know what the
She
figures
won
was.
the election.
She won the election.
She
Full
won the
stop.
election.
Yes.
And then remember, she's got one thing we keep forgetting, because now she's in politics. We've forgotten what she was like as a bureaucrat as a technocrat, in terms of her development track record. There was so much sort of mudslinging during that time, so much politicking, that we overlooked Anne Waiguru's achievements in devolution ministry. There was so much that was achieved through the NYS. Yes, there were scandals, sadly, that tainted that whole picture. But in terms of, as a ministry, it was the best run ministry for the longest in terms of achievements and what it was giving back to the people. Of course, she established the Huduma centers. In terms of devolution, that ministry also fell under her at the time. Did very well in implementing devolution.
With the revolution, would we say, of the
Devolution.
NYS? No, I'm saying
Oh.
with the revolution. I'm asking now, was the revolution per se of the NYS under her? We saw NYS coming to the fore as, then...
We saw it revamped.
Revamped.
We saw the work they then did in
Under
Kibra.
her. Yep.
Yeah, they
This
did
was
a lot
done
of
under
work
her.
in Kibra as well, putting toilets in there, building the roads, and so on. So in terms of her achievements and her track record, development track record, that's there. In terms of clout, we've seen her first-time politician and actually win. That's unheard of.
Even fighting corruption, I'm sure you'll say. She was a whistleblower in the NYS.
Absolutely, she was. She was a whistleblower in the scandal. We all know that.
She said that.
She's been cleared.
She said that she was a whistleblower. Right? So, the crystal ball this morning and Succession Mondays, Jerry Thorne has been shown, and she's telling us that Anne Waiguru is the next queen of Mount Kenya. Is it Mount Kenya, or are you just saying
Absolutely,
queen of-
Mount Kenya region. The question is, are we ready to have a woman leader?
That's the question. So I'm going to be opening up the phone lines after you take a look at traffic. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Good morning. 28 minutes to 10 o'clock.
Traffic.
All right, not so bad on major roads in the city. Mombasa Road, at least a little bit better heading into the city centre. Waiyaki Way, which was proving to be a bit of a nightmare earlier on, is flowing a little bit better now. Coming off Langata Road, where we also had terrible traffic today, where all cars were on the road at the same time. Not so bad now. It's getting around to the time where everybody has settled into where they were going. So not so bad. We still have a bit of a situation on Thika Road, and hopefully that will clear up soon, because we have traffic feeding in from Kiambu Road. We had that hold up round around the Allsops Junction. So now, and getting out into under the Pangani underpass and then heading to Globe Cinema roundabout, not so bad right now. Everybody converging in the CBD for the normal business, so not too bad now. Around about 9:30. If you see anything out of the ordinary, give us a call, send us a message. We'll keep you on the move.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So we're talking Anne Waiguru, and she herself has explained why she was campaigning alongside with, there was a number of governors there, of course, from Ukambani as well. And she says it's in keeping with the spirit of the handshake. So with her, she's supporting the president and Raila. So it's, again, I say it speaks volumes in terms of 2022 succession politics. And when we look at the Ruto element, which we can't ignore, Ruto factor, shall we call it, I think it's punched some deep holes into his campaign and his strategy, because here is somebody saying, actually, I stand with Raila. Now, Raila, of course, is Ruto's biggest threat. And this is the Kikuyu voting bloc that I think she'll be bringing along with her. I think finally we're seeing some leadership. There was an element, to be honest, and perhaps people don't want to hear this, but there was an element of leadership lacking within the Kikuyu community. People felt there was a vacuum, because what was happening is the president was so busy on development projects, whilst there's politicking on the other side, i.e. with the Tanga Tanga team. And because there's contradictory messages coming through, people did feel somewhat confused. So this is a step in the right direction. Kikuyus are feeling a sense of leadership. It has been there, but when somebody is not on the ground rallying, politicking and so on, you can feel, because we're used to feeling our sense of leadership is being told what to do politically.
And you think
not understanding that leadership is the development we're seeing.
The first time governor is the answer. If you look at the other governors, for example, if you look at the other governors in central area, who else has come out to try and position themselves? Of course, not the Nyeri governor, not the Nanyuki Laikipia governor, not the Nyandarua governor, not the Muranga governor, yes, because he has also started his own party. Kiambu governor, he has not come out in a public.
He has issues.
He has his own issues.
He has a few things to deal with.
Meru governor is a national leader, right? Embu governor is finishing his term, but he has not expressed any desire to go into national
governor
politics.
is facing a few problems at the moment. We'll see those
He's
unfold.
always full.
No. There's another impeachment coming coming along.
This guy is used to he's on his 7th life.
But I want
so
to go back
two
to
more.
I want to go back to what Waigoro said just quickly here. I've got a quote from her, and she says, "We must say in plain truth that the country is peaceful because of the handshake. We will protect it," she said. "The others who claim that they want to bring developments are just baiting you. They are one-man guitar, unlike Imran, who is the fruit of the handshake." Now, the one-man guitar, of course, she's referring to there is the DP, because he'd made promises and pledges that should they vote for his candidate, the candidate he was fielding, i.e. Mariga, that he would bring them all these goodies in terms of development. So if she can actually talk like that about Ruto, it gives us some insight as to where things stand in the party. Remember, this is a party member. Then they say they're in the same party.
Eric, you asked a question. First time entry into politics, she's now governor. Does she have that sort of weight? Let me draw from an example in the past. There's a gentleman called George Saitoti, the late George Saitoti, a maths professor at the university, appointed by the president. If you remember, he was nominated. Became minister. Within not too long a period, that became one of the most powerful figures in Maasai land, and then also became one of the most powerful people within the country. I'm simply saying, if you go down the annals of history of this country, you'll find there are examples of people who entered politics.
Who were handpicked, and then they rise very fast.
And they rise very fast.
Uhuru Kenyatta is an example as well.
No, Uhuru Kenyatta is a terrible example because he had a father. Yes, exactly. He had a name supporting him.
Almost chosen.
Yes. So if you talk about Raila Odinga, you'll say he had a father. Okay. I'm talking about people who didn't have that wind assistance. Okay. They just came into the fore, and we knew them as who they are. They are the founders of perhaps that particular dynasty. Okay. So it happens. Now, a lot of it has to do with something that Nigeria has been mentioning. It's courage. It's turning out to be counted. There may be people who have been in politics longer than Anne Waiguru, but they will be overtaken.
Nobody else has had the balls, excuse the pun, to do exactly what she's done. She's gone and stood on a national platform that has all the glare of the media at the moment. This is where all the attention is. And this is a question
breaking the mold, if you think
people
about
haven't
it.
been able to answer this. Are we going to support Ruto as central or not? There's been a lot of sort of contradictory statements coming out of different camps within Jubilee and indeed within Central. And she said it. We're not going to be manipulated. We're not going to be scared into doing anything. I support the handshake, i.e. I support Raila. More importantly, we're not voting for Ruto. Now that is leadership. And she hasn't done it in a way that, of course, is going to create conflict, but she's been afforded this opportunity. I think, quite lucky, if you ask me. It's a great platform, and she's come out. It takes a lot of guts to do what she's done, especially at a time like this where, there's rifts within the party and anything could go either way. And she's taken a bold step, and I think she's telling people we're voting for the handshake.
So,
and also, it's reinforcing what the president has said. I'm on the president's side. That's what she's saying. We have our leadership as it is. Can we follow it and listen to it?
You see, when you position yourself the way she has, you actually become, you put yourself in a pole position in a new era. You see, this handshake represents a new era.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll have players with different perspectives and different players in a manner of speaking.
Right.
Now, when you come out of the racing block and you're right at the front and you're saying this, and remember, you represent a community that has been the complete antithesis of this particular individual. It's a very bold step.
Do you see it? And with the kind of support that she already has, definitely. I mean, just looking at how people voted her in and where she holds that sway or where she holds that command in terms of what will go forth, you would not be surprised that the people who put her in power also then would follow with this same creed and push her even further ahead with the belief that she has put out there. And look, this is the way we're going, folks. They would definitely lend their support to her.
She stops being a community or tribal leader.
Absolutely. She becomes a national one.
Yes, that's what happens when you make such pronouncements in a gathering such as this one, and given the background from where you come from.
And you know what she's done at the same time is that she's
sentiments. I don't think this is her personal view. It's too bold a move for this to be. Well, I think so.
She's got the backing.
She's got the backing of her voters, for starters. Absolutely, of her voters, and she wouldn't go against her voters. She would not go against her voters, but she's got the backing here. This is not something that is going to be a personal opinion. This is coming, she is reflecting sentiments as well of a lot of unspoken things that haven't been said because maybe of tensions and fear of saying them and fear of repercussions as well of not paying back and the debt that we're in. There's been very few leaders that have been vocal. Gojiru Wambogo is one of them. He's come out very loudly and said, Akuna Deni, we don't owe that. That's not the sort of politics we do. He
coined Kieleweke.
Yeah, that one. I can never say it. Kelek.
No, you can. You just give it an interesting twist.
Right,
but you
Kileke. Anyway, that one. He coined it. And other than him, there's been very few leaders from Central actually come out and say, no, we don't owe anybody. This is the way we're going. Now, Waigoro hasn't come out and talked about Deni and so on. What she said is we can't be manipulated. As voters, nobody should be manipulated. And very importantly, I support peace. Have you seen the peace there's been in the country since the handshake? There was so much tension and division before this handshake. We wouldn't have been able to actually run this country, or the government would not have been able to carry on with its duties as a country with that level of tension. People were talking about secession. Do you know what that actually means? You know, the idea of breaking up the country. Usually there would have been some bloodshed beforehand. So it's a serious thing, this handshake. And what is she saying and what she's doing is in keeping with the spirit of the handshake and peace. I am supporting Raila. Now that's a bold move, and
you know, all these things
she
that
definitely
you're
has
saying,
my support.
The way you're describing Anne Waiguru and the way you're saying, you know, she's come out boldly, she's declared her stand. We've seen it before.
With who?
With Martha Karua.
Right.
Same constituent, right? Same
right.
thing about we can say about, you know.
And what did she come out? Do you realize the courage it takes to do what Anne Waiguru has done?
To stand up against more, yes, I realize.
Oh, we saw it before, and we saw it propel her to leadership.
She got to a point of leadership, and she got to a point, but she did not become the Kikuyu kingpin at any point.
But there was no gap. There was no gap at the time. Right now we're facing, there's a gap. Then there was no gap.
There's a strong leader that already exists in the name of Martha Karua.
There was no transition. Martha Karua as the kingpin of, she couldn't even get her backyard. She couldn't get votes in Kirinyaga.
She has gotten those votes.
She couldn't win. She couldn't win the election in Kirinyaga.
Yes, but she has won votes before many times. It's not the first time. It's not
okay. I mean, I'm not completely discounting it. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to hear that these are women at the fore of leadership in Central. It's Central.
The women of Gishogo, you've got to recognize.
Very powerful, absolutely. They do produce some strong women.
You must remember Gishogo at some point was a hotbed of opposition politics. Very seriously so. So when you talk about Gishogo and the people it has produced, it stands to reason that these are probably very independent-minded thinking people.
It seems it.
Consider
but they
that
know what they want as well.
And they elect women.
Right. That they know what they want.
Yes, the fact that they can elect women tells you something about them. These aren't your average citizenry who simply go with a paternalistic flow.
I don't think Martha Karua has the political legitimacy at the moment as we speak. Yes, she's
Strong
very
statement.
powerful.
What do you mean exactly?
Well,
What
she
is
hasn't been
legitimacy?
elected. She hasn't been elected. That
She
is where you
hasn't-
get your political
she hasn't-
legitimacy
she hasn't
from
won
your
an
electorate.
election.
Yes,
She hasn't
No,
won-
she didn't win the last
The
election.
last election. She's
Yes.
won an election.
So
And
she
the many.
doesn't have
Yeah.
she
And the last
doesn't
one-
have the
and the one before
political
that.
legitimacy
The one before that was
you
a
would need
presidency.
in order to become a kingpin at the moment. And I don't think that's Martha Karua's type of politics.
What do you think is her type of
We'll
politics?
discuss it after the break.
It's 10:15. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. For the next 15 minutes, let's open up the phone lines. Well, they've been open, but call in now. 0719-012-600. What do you think of Anne Waiguru?
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Not since Wangoa Makeri has the Kikuyu had a woman as their leader. And now, Jerry's crystal ball is telling her that Anne Waiguru is going to be the queen of Kikuyu land.
Absolutely.
Of Mount Kenya, actually.
Of
So it's
Mount
the entire.
Kenya.
So it's the Kikuyu, Embu, Meru, and the other two.
Wait. Wangua Makeri was. Did she cover Embu and Meru as well? Yeah. So. Yeah. So.
So this one is even bigger.
So this one might be a bit trickier. I don't see the Merus just falling in line.
No,
and
I
saying
think in
this is what
terms
we're
of
going to do, or the Embus. I don't
politically,
see
Mount
that.
Kenya does vote as a bloc. Politically, you can look at them
Politically,
as,
Mount
as,
Kenya
as one bloc.
has thus far voted as a bloc.
That might change, absolutely.
The issue of the
But
handshake,
we can't
the handshake
disregard history. We can't
changes
discount it.
very many things.
Significantly, absolutely. And what's interesting with the handshake, it's going to be a tough sell, Raila. We've got to be completely honest with ourselves. Raila is going to be a tough sale to Central because for the longest he's been sold as the boogeyman.
But in this case, where we're saying someone like Waiguru who holds such sway in Central, when she came out a few months ago and says that we must realize the power that Raila wields in
Absolutely.
this country, then can't we see a brokerage of that by that sentiment alone, by that expression alone of what she said to the same people that she's speaking to or appealing to now? You know,
She's got a
Phone lines
serious
are open.
job in front of her selling Raila to Central, but she'll manage.
Let's go to Nakuru. Andrew, good morning.
Morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to talk about Anne Waiguru and Jerry's crystal ball. Jerry wants to tell to us Anne Waiguru as this perfect person, covering all the corruption allegations against her. She's not bringing out the picture that Waiguru, even in her own county, she was being booed the other day. And look at the kind of leadership she brought to Raila yesterday in Kibera. Are they leaders you can reckon with in Central?
Okay, let's start. Let's start with all your accusations or with sort of your comments.
It's postulation. It's what he's saying. It's not an accusation. Yes.
You talked about corruption. A lot of leaders have been accused of corruption. We know that it was weaponized to use and politicized to bring people down or to fight people. Now she has been cleared, and until there's a conviction, Anne Waiguru is completely clear. Yeah, she
So
had
what's
to have
the
been cleared
difference
also for her
between,
to run.
What's the difference between Anne Waiguru and Ruto?
And have any allegations been brought against Ruto? Not that I know of.
So many.
All
in
right,
fact, you're saying
directly?
he can fight corruption because he's corrupt.
Mhm.
So what is the difference in this case?
Well, I think maybe my instinct and my crystal ball in this case, without going into too much detail. But the beauty is Waiguru has actually been accused and it has been investigated and she's fought it off in terms of come out clean. This Ruto hasn't gone through this process of being cleared. Ruto hasn't gone through that process. But I'm not comparing the two. Where did the money go? It could have even gone to Ruto. Who knows? who knows? Your second accusation, your second postulation rather was, what is the second assertion?
What
With
kind of
regards-
leaders did she bring to Raila during the Kibera? If you are saying she represents Central.
I think
What kinds of readers?
without reading too much in between the lines or looking at too much and going into too much detail, by virtue of the fact that she went and stood on the podium on a national platform when it has the glare of the media as it does at the moment, that is a serious statement. She would not be going against her voters in doing so. She's representing a certain demographic. She's representing maybe even the leadership at the moment. This is a bold move. This is not a personal move that somebody decides, actually, tell you what, I might just do this. This is very well thought out. She is representing a voice that is not being spoken for, which is important to acknowledge.
I don't refute that. But have you thought of it as a possibility that she has nowhere to go back to come 2022?
Well, she could be governor again, which is what a lot of governors are doing.
Not really.
Why
That
not?
is why she sees a position.
Oh,
where she
you
can
you
look
you
for
mentioned
national leadership. Now, she's
But
looking
why
for
aren't
national
others
leadership
coming?
because she cannot
Why
go
why
back.
hasn't anybody else stepped up to the challenge?
he was trying to explain to us
they
what he's
can make
saying.
it. Because they still think they can make it with the electorate. But for her, as Waiguru, she feels okay. Hapa nishachoma. Wacha nijaribu mbele.
Your crystal ball has a lot of cracks, but it's interesting. But mine trumps yours any day. Waiguru is going places.
No, I'd like to ask this gentleman a question.
Yes,
are you saying that Anne Waiguru doesn't have support in her backyard?
Yes, she doesn't.
Why do you say
No,
this?
she doesn't. Yes, she doesn't.
No, it's all right. Why are you saying this?
She did. She was elected, which is very true.
Yes.
But all along the line, whatever she's been trying to come up with,
Yes.
does not augur so well with the residents who she represents.
Yes.
So now, being in that position, what options does she have?
Change is difficult, and there'll be some. No. Change is difficult, and there'll
what
be some
options
resistance.
does she have?
Hold on. Let me.
So
speak.
having being left with a few.
Do you remember the resistance to Kivuta Kibwana initially?
The line of the lines of Akina Maina Commander who feel, okay, wacha ikue. After all, I have nothing to lose.
Liwe liwalo.
Down here, wacha liwa.
Andrew, thank you very much.
All the other central leaders who they're still stepping on along the fence because they don't want to clearly come out and say.
Doesn't this show you leadership? Leaders don't sit on fences, my friend. They stand on podiums.
Thank you, Andrew. Let me have Roderick, who's also on the line. Good morning, Roderick.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Roderick.
I'd like to disagree with that guy about Waiguru. Actually, I was supposed to say something else, but I want to disagree with him. One thing, there's no clear kingpin in central Kenya as we speak. Those who are trying to have the kingship clout, as I can call it, the likes of Kina Ndindi Nyoro and Kina Governor Waititu
or Moses Kuria
are suffering right now. When they're being put into line. And they've taken off from the BP. Right now, you dare any politician in Central to rise up against Uhuru Kenyatta right now and see if atarueka kwa laini. And Waiguru, yesterday, there's something else you guys are not talking about. Yesterday, when we saw that the likes of Kivuta Kibwana, the likes of Ngilu, the likes of these are the Mutua. This means that my friend Kalonzo Musyoka is being pushed into a political cold. There are people, there's a new force that is rising in Ukambani, and clearly you cannot form a government. Right now, you cannot form a government without support from any corner of the nation. So Waiguru rising up has seen an opportunity.
Absolutely.
She's clean now. She has not been accused of anything.
Absolutely.
She has come to the table. Now they have to make a government. That's it.
Yes, and there was a vacuum, and she's filled it. I think she's
And
the
there's
next
a fill the
leader of the.
vacuum.
Absolutely. Thank you.
People who are trying to fill the vacuum had like the likes of Ndindi Nyoro and Ujama Waititu, the Kimani Ijungwa. Those guys are non-starters.
They've
And all they have started
put in their
realizing
place.
Ubaya. They have been put into their place.
Thank you.
So let's watch the next election. But now mimi nimeona hapa hivi sisi Waluya tumekuwa short changed, but ni sawa.
Kwa nini hamshikani? Mbona mnakataa kushikana?
The podium yesterday.
You had your own podium.
Oparanya was there.
You had your podium
you
by
have
yourselves
somebody.
for a whole weekend. Good morning. Good morning, Karaoke from Nakuru. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
Very good.
Thank you.
My point is to those people who are talking about Waiguru. I think if you look at a political scenario that is happening in the country since 1992, you'll find that if you come to ethnical politics in this country,
Mhm.
you find that today, Raila Odinga is with the Uhuru Kenyatta. But can you ask yourself why? The reason as to why the Kikuyus are loggerheads with the president, despite the fact that they elected him. Because most of us Kikuyus, and especially when we talk about Kikuyus, because Kikuyus, if you want to see a difference from Kikuyu, then bring Raila in terms of politics. But the reason why I've said this is because of that man who has just talked right now and gone. Is usually the other Nyanza province, in most cases, they follow Laila wherever he goes, irrespective of what he says or what he does. For us Kikuyus, you can see today, since the handshake, there is this kind of a loggerhead between the president and his residents, where those who elected him. And especially me in Nakuru, I've been campaigning against, because since the handshake today, we have been subjected to slavery.
Sorry?
If you come down here, Don, if you come down here, you'll find, despite the fact that you cannot see people demonstrating in the street like he usually did when he was in the opposition, it doesn't mean that there is peace in the country. Because there is more than that, because many people even today cannot raise their food on the table due to the fact that the handshake and what they are doing has increased this kind of wage bill to an extent whereby what we earn here is not enough for our children and our family.
Could I ask you a question, please?
Of course you can.
Yes. From what you are saying, am I to understand that you feel that the handshake is something that has shaken central Kenya?
I mean to say this. The handshake was never accepted in central Kenya.
Why?
If you look at those who, there is a kind of a difference that cannot be solved by, I think, this generation of today, between us and Raila Odinga. If you go to Central Province today, you find that those who were rejected by people, especially commanders and their Kabandos and the others, were rejected. Those were the only people who are on the other side of political
Now,
development.
let me ask you something. After 2007, 2008, did you think Ruto would ever be accepted in Central?
Ask people like us. We are here on the ground. Most of us were born in Rift Valley, especially me. I was born in Nandi district. That's where I was born, and I'm a Kikuyu, by the way. But despite the fact that we continue maybe fighting with the current regime, doesn't mean there is a glued hatred between us and the current. If you are to compare us and the Raila Odinga,
because there has been concerted efforts by the leaders to bring us together previously, and with that happening now with the handshake, you will see that will change over time. If you were previously after 2007, if you were to tell a Kikuyu that they will vote for Ruto, they would have thought you're mad. But over time and with the efforts and concerted efforts from the leaders, you see they can bring us together. They're the ones who divide us and bring us together, by the way. So if they want to bring us together for peace,
Jerry, that's what Kariuki said.
the Draco, you got
Yes, Kariuki said. Yes.
Remember, I told you shall be engaging on daily basis. If you come to the ground here, we have even the evidence why we fought. I remember somebody calling us Maua, 2007, my dear Auntie. I think you are not in a festival. We were here, my dear.
I'm from Nakuru,
remember.
Kiambu.
Yes, and you are not in the midst of those areas.
Mr. Kariuki, I want to ask a different question. What do you have against Raila? What do you have against Raila Odinga?
What?
What do you have against Raila Odinga?
I have nothing against Raila Odinga.
But you
remember, even before the atrocities that occurred in 2007, most of his fellow men, and especially those people who come from Nyanza province, and in fact sometimes even in Western province, there were clear evidence on what they were telling us. And I remember, if you go back to Njuri Geshuru, I remember when after the aftermath of the war, the atrocity, he went through all those areas to seek the evidence. Why did these people have to do this? And the evidence that the Njuri Geshuru got is that why are Kikuyu everywhere? Why are these people coming and becoming so prosperous? Even
Jerry,
if he started a kiosk.
so Kariuki, You've said you'll engage Jerry on this one on a daily basis. So we're coming to the
course.
end of the show. So we expect that you'll, of course, also call us tomorrow and we can continue
Tell
this
her
conversation.
I'm not against her.
Yes.
The only thing that I'm against is that he's supporting something that has subjected this country into total slavery.
Asante sana. The Situation Room continues. Of course, today we've been looking at the crystal ball being Succession Mondays, and where Njeri Thorne has been saying that this is Anne Waiguru's turn. She will be the Mount Kenya Queen.
Absolutely. Nobody's been able to actually step up to the challenge. She's done it on a huge platform with a lot of attention from the country at the moment. And to actually go against something that people might think is unpopular is a sign of great leadership. So clearly the next leader in the Kikuyu Central region.
Well, we'll wait to see whether the crystal ball will be proven right or wrong. Thank you very much for tuning in this morning in the Situation Room. Between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., my name is Eric Lati. We have Seti Muga, Jerry Thorne, and Nduoko. It's now 10 o'clock. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.